Good evening. I'm Bernard Green, Chair of the Brookline Select Board, and this is the regular meeting of the Select Board for July 25th, 2023. First of all, announcements and updates from the Select Board. I'd like to make an announcement, just make a statement regarding something that happened today in Washington. For no other reason than I found it very moving. And that was President Biden issued a proclamation honoring Emmett Till and his mother, Mamie Till Mobley. And what I found so moving is the connection between something that an individual mother did that had such a major impact on our country and the world. President Johnson or President Biden indicated that when Rosa Parks had talked about her not going to the back of the bus, she mentioned that she thought of Emmett Till. So Emmett Till's death, as horrible as it was, had an impact on her, that had an impact on Montgomery bus boycott, and that had an impact on our country and the world in ways that no one probably could have predicted. President Biden is making 3 locations national monuments. One of the locations, the side of the river where Emmett Till's body was found, had monuments put up for many years, and each monument was attacked, shot up, destroyed. But this is going to be a national park monument honoring Emmett Till there, as well as at the courthouse, and as well as I believe the church in Chicago where his funeral was held. And as national monuments, it's unlikely that people will be able to just shoot at them and destroy them, as happened with previous announcements. I was very moved by the president's statement and the statement of Emmett Till's cousin, a reverend, a minister whose name I don't remember, and the ceremony in general. So I just wanted to mention that because it was, to me, very, very moving, and I hope people take the time to read about it or watch reports of it on TV. So.
There's a statue of Emmett Till and his mother. I read something about a statue being dedicated along the lines of what you're talking about. I wonder if it's at one of those sites.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Wait, I think Paul and Mary. Okay, Mary.
I just want to give a shout out to DPW today. A massive tree was down during the recent quick storm, blocking off an entire lane on the Chestnut Hill Dean Road intersection, which is a very busy intersection. And I called it into Aaron, and it was very, very quickly attended to. I was very impressed. I just wanted to give a shout out to DPW.
Any other announcements or updates from the board, John?
Summer is the time to really enjoy a lot of music events in Brookline that are presented for free. And I just thought I'd mention a couple of them. There's a summer concert series that has been going on at Fisher Hill Reservoir Park and coming up on August 9th. These concerts take place at 6 to 7:30. Fisher Hill Reservoir Park, August 9th, the Daybreakers. And then August 16th, Vibe Check. And August 2nd, I believe there's going to be a concert at the golf course. And the other event I want to mention is that there is something known as National Night Out, and it is coming up on August 1st. And it's involves an opportunity at Brookline Avenue Field for people from all over the town, but especially young people, to come out, get better acquainted with the police department and others of the town departments, and just to have a lot of fun. Pat Patriot is going to be there, I'm assured, and it's at 6 to 8 p.m. August 1st at Brookline Avenue Field. There'll be souvenirs and I think it'll be one of those evenings that people will be very, very glad they took part in. 6 to 8 p.m. August 1st at Brookline Avenue Field.
Thank you. Paul?
One thing, Bernard, thank you. Oh, I gotta get my microphone. There is a new, we're gonna call it a health social group that has been launched. There's a national group called Walk with a Doc. And there's now a local chapter that is for Newton and Brookline. And the concept is there's a couple of local docs. They meet with individuals on a scheduled basis. I'll tell you when the next dates are. It's targeted for more seniors, 50 to 70s or older. And you get to have a conversation with a little presentation by a doctor. And then they walk around the Brookline Reservoir, Chestnut Hill Reservoir. It's a wonderful program. They've already had 70 walkers participate so far. You can go to walkwithadoc.com to sign up. You do want to register for the event so they can expect you to come. The next walk will be Wednesday, August 16th at 6:30 p.m. and then also Thursday, August 17th. And these would both take place at the Brookline Reservoir. So go to walkwithadoc.com and sign up if you want to walk with some docs. Thanks.
Okay.
Do they do diagnoses? It's just
I don't know if there's much diagnosis going on, but it's more of a health discussion.
I get
You
it.
need to go to your doctor.
Yeah, exactly.
Make
Exactly.
use of his malpractice insurance. Okay, any other comments? So public comment period. John, will you?
Certainly.
Forgive me.
Welcome to public comment, and it's an opportunity for us to hear your perspective on the issues in Brookline that matter to you. Few rules. Each person speaking tonight is limited to 3 minutes. You don't need to use the entire time. You may if you like. Please refrain from personal attacks and from addressing personnel issues during your comments. Members of the public sometimes raise questions during public comment. We may be able to provide a quick answer. More likely, we'll work with staff to get a more thorough answer and respond over email. We'll let you know when you have 30 seconds remaining and when your time is up. Please conclude your remarks at that time. And if you have more to say, you are welcome to send an email to board members expressing your thoughts in greater detail. And so, Charles, who's first on our list?
First person signed up for public comment is Representative Vitolo. You may join us at the presentation station over here, and your 3 minutes will begin.
And just as a reminder to folks of the new rule about total time, at the beginning of the meeting, we reserve 15 minutes. At the end, if the time exceeds 15 minutes, then if the time ends and there's still people willing to speak, it's at the discretion of the chair. We may allow public comment at the end of the meeting. So stick around. Be sure to let Charlie know by raising your hand or putting using the Q&A feature if you're remote that you'd like to make a public comment so that we have a count of who's remaining. And at the end, the chair can decide how we hear the public comment at the end. So that's another option. Thank you.
Thank you, Chaz.
My name is Tommy Vitolo. I serve as Brookline's state representative. And quickly, I'd like to praise the leadership of Select Board Member Ashkenazi for her work toward paternity leave for Brookline employees. It's a good thing, and I am grateful. More slowly, on April 14, 2023, the Massachusetts Black and Latino Legislative Caucus held its annual Black Excellence on the Hill Award. Black Excellence on the Hill is an annual event hosted by the Massachusetts Caucus, the Black and Latino Legislative Caucus, to commemorate Black community leaders and trailblazers who are moving the needle forward in cities and towns across Massachusetts. This year, Select Board Chair Bernard Green was one of the awardees in recognition of his 30 years of public service in the Tennessee and Massachusetts Attorneys General offices, the Massachusetts Clean Water Trust, and 8 years and counting serving Brookline on the Select Board. I was unavailable to attend the event at the State House as I was traveling to my brother's wedding in Virginia. And so if you will allow this indulgence, I'd like to present Chair Green with the award here
Wow.
tonight.
Very nice.
And so I'd like to just read briefly what the Black and Latino Legislative Caucus wrote about Chair Green. They wrote, Brookline Select Board Chair Bernard Green has dedicated his life to public service. First elected as a Brookline Town Meeting member in 2006, Green was appointed to the town's Finance Committee. As a town meeting member, Green led the drafting of a bylaw that established the Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Relations Department and Commission. Green's thoughtful and empathetic leadership propelled his election as the first Black member of the town's Select Board, where he served as chair in 2019, 2020, and currently serves. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Green found creative ways to provide support for struggling families and seniors. He also created a policing reform committee that recommended responses to nationwide policing issues. Green's public service reaches beyond Brookline, as he has served as a Massachusetts Assistant Attorney General in the Public Charities Division and as senior legal counsel to the Massachusetts Clean Water Trust. Green's commitment to public service in every aspect of his life makes him a beacon of Black excellence.
Well, thank you, Representative Vitolo. This is a surprise, by the way, so I don't have any speech to respond.
I may have conspired with some. We're gonna, I'm asking you to sneak around real quick.
Okay.
We'll do a picture.
Great.
Some of us come prepared. Actually, shade.
I was gonna say, I like the facial hair a lot, Tommy.
Everyone's coming in. As long as you got.
Get out of it.
All right.
By the way.
On three. One, two, three. Great. Congratulations.
Okay, the next person signed up for public comment in person is Rena Cohen. Rena, would you like to join us at the presentation station? And your 3 minutes will begin.
I'm sorry, we do ask that you speak through the mic because people otherwise can't hear you on.
Charles, you can hold it for her, right?
Yeah, also I can't hear you. For me, I'm hard of hearing, so I need the mic too. But
We will help you there.
We'll set it up for you.
We'll make sure it's easy for you.
He'll help you. Yeah,
I just
Sorry,
stand here
great.
for a minute and ask you to look at me
yes.
and to see me. Okay. What do you see? An old crippled woman who lives in Brookline since 1969, always pays her taxes with pride. I believe in paying taxes. I know that it's almost not patriotic in America, but I still do. Always votes for overrides because our children need good schools and good education. I love my community. And in my little small way, trying to contribute positive and nice things. I live across from Devotion, so I installed a mini library so that the children who live across my house and are waiting for the parents, they see a library for an old woman, and I mean, it's important. Okay. I came here to show you, not necessarily personally, of course, but still, as you are the body that runs Brookline, you still did it to me. On May 31st, I crossed Beacon Street. My left foot got into a pothole. I fell, collapsed, ended up in the emergency, broke my kneecap. So I will spare you the description of my pain, misery, and agony as a result of that. You know, you also understand that people fall when potholes are filling up our streets, and not only streets, actually. You know that Coolidge Corner has many elderly people. You also know that falling for elderly people is dangerous. So, is this the way what I deserve from people who are supposed to care just a little bit for me. Because even though I'm old, I said, I'm not too long from jumping into my grave.
I'm sorry, 30 seconds.
Oh,
please.
okay, finished. Thank you for telling me. That's it. I'm on the, I'm at the end. To add insult to injury, your administration has treated me with no respect and no dignity. They are looking for ways to excuse not to deal with my case. This hurts me even more than the physical pain. They are trying to save money on what? On my back. I hope you will find a way to renew my belief in humanity by doing the right thing. Thank you.
The next person signed up for public comment is Ken Lewis. Ken, you are being promoted now. Ken is joining us over Zoom. And just as soon as Ken is promoted, they may unmute and share video. They need to accept the request. We don't get a response from Ken. I'm just going to move on to the next person, in which there's nobody. There are currently 21 people in Zoom right now, and only one of them is using the hand raise feature, and they are not accepting the promotion. So anyone else in person? I don't think so. I think we're going to
He just accepted. the
just
motion.
accepted. Perfect. Ken, you may unmute and share your video, and your 3 minutes will begin. Ken still hasn't unmuted or shared his video. Give him just a second here.
Yeah,
How much longer do we have, Chaz, on the 15?
We're good.
Okay. Ken, I'll just asking you one more time. I'll send you a note. Please go ahead and, okay, you've unmuted and you can share your video if you like, and whenever you'd like, your 3 minutes will begin.
I'm sorry, I think you've got me confused with somebody. I was just listening in for the MBTA community.
okay.
update.
You had your
You had your
hand
hand up.
raised.
Sorry.
Yeah, you
Oh,
had your
my
hand up, so-
apologies.
So we thought
I
you were.
don't,
ready to
it's not
speak.
showing on my end.
That's all
Sorry.
right. No worries. Okay, moving forward, no one else is using the hand raiser Q&A feature, so I don't think anyone else would like to sign up for public comment. So.
Okay, thank you. Next, let's see, minutes for the July 11th meeting of the Select Board first. Any comments or edits to those minutes? All in favor of approving the minutes for July 11, 2023, please indicate by saying aye. John,
Aye.
Miriam,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Next, we have question of approving the licensing meeting minutes from this morning, July 25th, 2023.
That's a July. The meeting was actually held on July 19th.
Okay,
27th says here.
yeah, that was a mistake in the
Oh, yeah.
agenda.
Okay.
And I followed that mistake too in my notes.
Oh, yeah, it's the 20th. You're right. I'm very sorry. It's not it was the 19th of July. Yes, that they meant.
Okay. Okay, and these are minutes of a meeting of staff, and I believe Mr. Paul was there to do the hearings on licenses for various businesses in town, in lieu of having those hearings at this meeting, to release both select board as well as town staff from the need to spend a huge amount of time at our select board meetings going through these hearings. We have the minutes of those meetings, which I believe everyone has had a chance to look at. I find the minutes to be very, very helpful and appreciate the work that went into them. And yes.
I just want to say, having read the meeting minutes, I appreciate that Paul and Chaz went to Babkey, because I go there all the time for their cheese sticks. So I thought that corner definitely has room. So I appreciate that they actually went out and did it and saw it and then approved suggested approving the meeting.
And Babkey is a, I believe, restaurant.
It's a Swedish Jewish, it's like
Yeah, I
a
don't need-
Swedish Jewish bakery
Okay.
on the corner of, the True Life senior housing.
Oh,
is
yeah,
Next
yeah.
to KI, it's right there. And if you haven't been, the
Okay.
cheese sticks are to die for.
Okay, so originally, I believe the materials had a Google map of the site. And on that map, it looked like there was just
More
a
narrow.
narrow space
Yep.
for outdoor dining. But then Mr. Paul and Chaz actually went to the site in person and I guess took measurements, or at least eyeballed it, and
It's big. yeah.
determined that there's plenty of room.
Oh,
So
yeah.
But it-
that-
it was Paul's idea. I just followed up. It was,
Yeah.
he was, it's right.
So that's not an issue that it is going to be separately dealt with by the select board, but part of the minutes that we're going to approve. So did you want to say something?
I think there's plenty of room. The other thing is that there are other establishments there that have outdoor seating that are that actually constrain the public way more than Bakey's. So is it Bakey? I may be pronouncing it wrong. But yeah, there's plenty of room there, and it'll be a great
Okay.
experience to have those seats out there.
So I move approval of the licensing meeting minutes from July 19, 2023. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John,
Aye.
Miriam,
Aye.
Mike.
Aye.
Paul.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Next, we have a number of miscellaneous items. It looks like about 20 or so. I didn't count them,
Including the licenses.
including the licenses, license approvals. Let's see, is anything worth pointing out? There is one thing, we have a grant from the state for the police department. Let's see, where is that?
Halfway down.
I just wanted to
H.
highlight. H?
Jail diversion grant from the Massachusetts Department of Mental Health.
Okay, yeah, I would just want to highlight that because I think that's an incredibly important grant, and Chief Pastor is going to, I assume, talk about that, or at least indicate, give some more details on that when she makes her presentation later on. But the school to prison pipeline is a terrible phenomenon in this country that you really takes from us potential in youth that make mistakes and get caught up in a system that's just not forgiving, and he's not even rational, ending up in prison, and we lose their potential to the detriment of our country, our community, et cetera. So this jail diversion grant, which does a lot of things, is way more important than it appears just on a surface, because it really helps us to avoid the type of bad situations that too many young kids, particularly young Black and Hispanic kids, face in this country. So I just want to point that out and hope that we have some discussion of that later on. That's the only one that I want to point out. John?
I just had a question about another of the items. Is the item relating to the transportation board, is that purely a hypothetical? In other words, we're paving the way for there to be a longer period of time
Yes.
for those hearings to take place?
Yes, I mean, we've talked to the parties, there was an appeal filed from a decision of the transportation board. We talked to the parties just because of the scheduling for all of them. And by the time the appeal was filed, it was too late to get on this agenda, and the 15th wasn't really an effective point for them. So we pushed it out to a date that's mutually agreeable between the parties, which is the 26th. We have to formalize the agreement to do so because the transportation board is actually a creature of special act, state statute. So, and it says in the state statute, you have X amount of time to write a decision.
Okay,
Or put a decision out. So we just needed something in writing that says everyone agrees that it could be longer.
okay.
Okay.
So
Yes.
that's, it's not hypothetical.
No, that's not hypothetical.
Yeah, we will be having a hearing.
Yeah, yeah.
And there is an appeal in process.
Yeah, and do we have a date for that?
The 26th of September.
26th of September, okay.
So get ready.
Yes.
Wait, and just to be clear, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So, and if we uphold the decision of the transportation board and the neighbors still want to appeal it, they would go to town meeting,
Correct.
and we'd have to put something on the warrant for town meeting?
Correct.
Okay.
It's just a procedural process because ordinarily it would be too late for them to get on the warrant if they waited till the 26th. But we figured for the convenience of the parties, everyone agreed, including the original petitioner, the private school, that it made sense that the select board would use all reasonable efforts to get it heard during the pendency of town meeting this fall by putting it in a special within the special.
Special within special. Okay, thank you.
Or why wouldn't we just do a placeholder warrant article?
Easier to do a special within the special than a placeholder, I think.
Okay, so I move approval of items 6B through 6P on our miscellaneous agenda. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John,
Aye.
Miriam,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. Okay, moving on. Boards and commissions interviews. Actually, I think the one interview we had has been postponed.
Oh.
So let's move on.
Well, that's-
Um,
I've been just trying to access her CD because I can't get into the back.
Okay.
so I will stop trying to do that then.
Next, MBTA-CA update and discussion on the status of the MBTA Communities Act project regarding the Harvard Street zoning proposal, as well as the M District zoning proposal. Jazz, you want to introduce this and
Sure.
we'll have our
I want to make sure that
slideshow.
we have do we have Maria Morelli?
Maria, I thought was going to be here in person. I don't see her here or in the attendees list. We do have Dick Benka.
Good.
I could promote Dick.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
promote Dick, and then while we're promoting him, we'll just kind of talk through this. Just to give the broader community an update on the, really detailed efforts. And I see I have a message from the planning director that she's on her way up. So from their office. I want to begin by thanking the multifamily permitting committee and the folks who have been dutifully attending both those meetings and the meetings of the for development of the Harvard Street proposal. There's been just a great deal of helpful community engagement across the board with an aim towards what the select board described at its previous meeting where they received an update on this as achieving some sort of solution that makes sense for Brookline. And the development of these many different potential proposals is continuing and is continuing really effectively. I want to be clear to the community based on the direction that we received from the select board at the private meeting where and how staff is working on this issue so that everyone is comfortable with what's going to be happening in the next couple of weeks. The select board has expressed interest in the last meeting in developing some sort of solution that they could present as a body to town meeting, a single warrant article that they could present to a body that they viewed it that's passing town meeting with broad community support. That is what we are working towards. In order to do that, there are many different parallel paths currently ongoing with many different processes in place from which there will then be a number of different potential outcomes that we can use information from in order to develop that potential option. And we want to do that, let me be clear, we're going to do that such that the select board has the ultimate say in developing a potential warrant article to that end. So what you're going to see in the coming weeks, both with, I don't want to speak for the committee, but in the committee's work, but also in the planning department's work, is working towards their proposed solutions, working towards the ideas that were first outlined in the Harvard Street proposal, as well as what the committee is now working towards in terms of a finalized proposal, getting that work finished and ensuring that it exists in a completed form, in a completed standalone form, and then working together collaboratively to come up with the possibility of a single proposal to the select board that the select board could review, comment on, modify as they desire, and adopt as a warrant article for town meeting. So I want to be very clear that when you see presentations from one group or another at these various meetings, hearings, and so forth, what you're seeing is not the select board's proposal. The select board has not yet made a determination on any proposal. It is waiting to have all the information necessary and all the hard work that these folks have done to be concluded before we start that process. So do not feel as though there is some sort of attempt to move one item or the other forward. The select board's position, as I understand it from the previous meeting, in the direction that we are following on staff, is come up with a solution. And we want to utilize all available options in order to come up with a solution that works. I would also just make clear from a community perspective, I know a lot of people in the community are eager to tinker with these ideas, maybe come up with solutions of their own, say, oh, this is my solution. I can propose the solution. I want people to be, I think all of us want to, let many ideas bloom and have that ongoing community dialogue. I think given how sensitive this concept is, I think folks on all sides of this debate just need to be patient and be in the spirit of community outreach and conversation rather than presenting, this is my solution and I encourage you to go with it. I want all of us, or at least as many of us as possible, to reach a space where we are comfortable as a community and be on board with that. So I would just really caution folks, don't get out ahead in eagerness to be the person who solves the problem. It's not any one person's problem to solve, it's the community's problem to solve. And we really need the input and engagement of the entire community in order to be able to do that. So with that very long introduction, sorry. I think I want to let I see Dick Benka is ready to go, and we have the planning department as well.
Do you have
Okay,
a third order of operations? We'll start with Dick. Okay, great. Go ahead, Dick. Sorry.
thank you. First of all, I assume you can hear me and you can see my screen.
Yes.
Yes.
Great, thank you. This is an update of the work that the MBTA-CA Multifamily Permitting Committee has been doing. I actually have the names of the committee members up on the screen. I want to thank them. And I also, in particular, want to thank Kara Bruton for her expertise and her judgment as we've been working through this process. In your packet, you've actually been provided with documents that the committee provided at the July 18th public hearing, a draft of a zoning article, zoning map of our M or multifamily districts, an analysis done by RKG Associates of our initial cut of the multifamily districts, and the actual committee presentation that was used at that July 18th public hearing. Basically, the committee started this process with a firm commitment to comply with the legal requirements of the MBTA Act. It had been suggested by the select board that we look at the M or multifamily zones and at the two family zones or T zones in town. The two family zones didn't work. There were insufficient numbers to meet the state's 6,990 capacity requirement. And in addition, we were informed that accessory dwelling units would not count for compliance. We also looked at some commercial zones outside of Harvard Street. Like Harvard Street, they ran into the same problem, and that is that the MBTA Act prohibits mandating commercial uses even on the first floor and even in existing commercial corridors. We also recognized that compliance had to be acceptable to town meeting, and at the same time, we were looking for options to unlock actual housing development. So that led us to look at a multifamily or M districts. And our initial analysis indicated that if we took all of the M districts in town, we'd have a small margin above the 6,990 capacity that we were required to have to comply with the state law. As a result, for our public hearing, we sent out 23,000 postcards. Now, those were duplicative in some cases. There were owners who were also residents, voters, and so forth. But this was casting a very broad net. Subsequent to doing that, we got the result of an analysis of the M districts from RKG, which is the consultant that actually built and is monitoring the state model. And as opposed to our capacity requirement of 6,990 units, the RKG analysis showed us that if we used all of the M districts, we would have a capacity of 15,800 units. So we had approximately 9,000 units more than we needed to to develop. That led us to the authorization to go ahead with a further analysis by RKG. And hopefully that will have a 10-day turnaround. My understanding is that the agreement with RKG will be executed this week, I hope, and we will be looking at a turnaround of 10 days from that. We've developed parameters for that further analysis. We have included lot coverage and building floor plate restrictions, and we have asked RKG to identify the capacity in each geographic district within or sub-district within the districts that RKG used for its initial analysis. That analysis will give us, we hope and we believe, the potential to do several things. It would give us the potential to pare back the geographical area. For example, to not include properties within National Register districts, such as some of the attached townhomes on Beacon Street. It would give us the opportunity to not include areas with greater building demolition risk. It would give us the opportunity to exclude some of the commercial properties within M districts, and that really is a very small or almost negligible number. Or, and we could also retain discretionary design review by special permit on some large buildings. But for all of this, we are now going to be awaiting the results of the second RKG analysis. As I've said, we've looked at opportunities beyond legal compliance to unlock additional housing development. And very quickly, the bottom line is that if the M or multifamily districts satisfy the legal requirements of the MBTA Act, we can incentivize housing in other areas without the constraints that the MBTA Act imposes. Among those areas, the Brookline Housing Authority property at Juniper, Walnut, and High Street, which actually would be MBTA compliant. Members of the committee, and particularly Ken Lewis, has been working diligently with the BHA on required zoning changes. The units here would be 100% affordable, as opposed to the 10% currently allowed under state law, or the 15% under the town's inclusionary zoning bylaw. The units also would all be ADA compliant. There would be 175 to 225 units, depending on the mix between family and senior units that would be developed by the BHA with the community. That would be an additional 75 to 125 net additional units. And again, all of them would be new or totally renovated, as opposed to the non-ADA and not renovated units that now exist. Second item would be a small potential amendment to zoning for the Emerald Island. As you know, there was an overlay district for the Emerald Island that was put in place about 6 years ago, or over 6 years ago. There has not been any residential development in that area during that period. There is a belief that we might unlock some residential development in that area by allowing studios and units with bedrooms, in addition to the micro units, senior units, and live work units that are now allowed and that have not led to any development. This would allow family units. Because this area would not have to be MBTA compliant, we could continue the requirement for ground floor commercial space in that area. Chestnut Hill Village, there is properties that have been assembled, bounded by Hammond, Heath, and Sheaf Streets. The developer is working with the neighborhood and town meeting members on a potential zoning proposal to the committee. We are awaiting that. We have not yet received that. That would be 100 units of new housing. And again, that would be working toward the fall town meeting. We have done analysis of allowing 3 units in existing 2-family or T districts. There are over 1,000 properties in these districts that have the minimum required lot size to allow a 3rd unit. This could be done either by rezoning entirely from 2-family to 3-family, which might be a really heavy lift at town meeting, or by allowing accessory dwelling units. There's already been some work done on standards for the physical envelope. And I just spoke today with Roger Blood of the Housing Advisory Board. The Housing Advisory Board is moving forward with its proposal, or will be moving forward with its proposal for accessory dwelling units for single family, and to revise the single family requirements for accessory dwelling units, and to allow accessory dwelling units in 2-family buildings. This would be scheduled for the spring town meeting. So within that package that the Housing Advisory Board is putting together, just focusing on the 2-family zones, there are over 1,000 properties that would be potentially included. And that brings me to Harvard Street, or portions of Harvard Street. If Harvard Street were free from the requirements of the MBTA Act substantively, and free from the time constraint of the end of year requirement to come into legal compliance, we could, as a town, require 1st floor commercial use, or indeed even broader commercial use. We could increase the minimum 1st floor commercial depth from 15 feet to a commercial depth that would be more commercially viable. We could preserve or even enhance, rather than dilute, the town's affordable housing requirement. As I indicated earlier, the MBTA Act currently limits affordable housing to 10%, subject to a change allowed by the state. The town's 15% affordable housing requirement is obviously greater than that. And we would not need, even if we were allowed the 15%, we would not need to dilute that requirement in an effort to try to incentivize 1st floor commercial space. If the MBTA Act were not we were not required to comply with it, we could mandate 1st floor commercial space. We could require a minimum number of dwelling units in order to trigger the town's inclusionary zoning, and to discourage or get away from the large full floor luxury units. The MBTA Act, if we were to have to comply with it, would not allow limits on unit size. But if we did not have to comply with that act in our zoning, we would have more flexibility. We also could ensure adequate parking for commercial viability. As you know, you've authorized a $350,000 study analyzing parking supply and demand in the Coolidge Corner and JFK crossing area. We would not have to leapfrog that, trying to meet an end of year requirement for MBTA Act compliance. We could address the increased demand from the Coolidge Corner Theater expansion, loss of curbside spaces to outdoor dining, deal with on-site parking, or indeed perhaps even consider a required contribution to enhance municipal lot capacity. And finally, here is the future schedule that we've worked out with Ms. Bruton, with Kara Bruton, the town's Director of Planning and Community Development at our last meeting. We are going to await the RKG analysis. We will be considering the select board comments, voting on design standards, voting on geographic boundaries, and maximum building size after receiving the RKG analysis. We will be holding a public hearings on the Emerald Island zoning change, on the BHA zoning change, and on any Chestnut Hill Village zoning change And we will be making comments to the select board on Harvard Street and providing a cover memo to the select board recommending future actions. And you will have all of this in your hands. But I thought I would give you our proposed schedule that we have worked out with Ms. Bruton. So with that, thank you very much, and I will yield.
Thank you, Dick.
Want to take it now? Well, we take Vicky now, if once everyone has questions
You mean before this?
before the presentation, or the planning presentation, just so they can go.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Actually, what I'd like to do is to sort of interrupt this item and take up a common victualler license seating amendment for Bakey restaurant. It was on our on the minutes for the July 19th hearing, but we have to vote it separately. And I'd like to do that now so that the representative of Bakey, who I believe is in the audience, or I've been told is
Would
in
you
the
mind
audience.
not sharing? Would you mind unsharing your screen, Dick? Sorry.
Let me stop that.
And yes, let me get them up
Thank
here
you.
for you.
Okay.
Oh, okay, so they're on Zoom.
I just promoted or Ohana.
I
Don't
think
s-
John Ietta is their counsel.
I don't see. I see a John.
In the attendees, John Ietta,
Not right now.
all the way. at the top.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, there's one
Was
hand
right-
raised.
Okay. Just offered John a promotion.
Okay, I think we're good to go.
Okay, do any select board members have any questions or comments?
Just how good the cheese sticks are.
Okay, Marion Ashkenazi says your cheese sticks are good. And I guess that's a commercial plug for you.
Uh-oh.
Okay,
That ethics screen.
yeah. Oh, you have no
Oh, no.
We never
ownership
met.
interest in it, right? Okay. Okay, so hearing no questions or comments, all in favor of approving the common victualler license seating amendment for Bakey, Inc., I believe it is. Please indicate by saying aye. John,
Aye.
Miriam,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. Okay, I
You
guess,
have to do the patio seating too.
oh,
Sorry.
okay.
One more.
Second, I'd like to move approval of the application of adding patio seating for 370 Harvard LLC doing business as Bakey at 370 Harvard Street. Patio seating will consist of 16 seats. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John,
Aye.
Miriam,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. So, Mr. Ohana,
Thank you very much.
you're
Thank you
approved
very much
for,
for your time.
well, thank you.
Thank you for your patience.
Okay.
Welcome to Brookline.
Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate it. I apologize. My video in my own screen is not showing, so I don't know if you can see me or not, and I apologize if it is a blank screen.
No,
I can
we can
see
hear
you.
you.
You
We're
can hear
good.
me. Okay, great. So yeah, we're both here, and if you had any follow-up, we'd be more than happy to answer any questions, but we appreciate your time.
Thank you very
Okay.
much. I appreciate
you.
your time.
Good evening.
Okay, so, looks like.
May I ask a question? Is it possible to have some questions of the presentation we just heard, or
Sure.
Yeah.
Why we do that
or would
now?
you rather wait till both presentations?
I think they're sufficiently separate that maybe it makes sense.
Yeah,
to
if
ask
you don't
these
mind, yeah.
Right now,
I
yeah.
just said, so is Dick's back up? Great, thank you. Terrific committee work, and I'm just so grateful to this committee and so glad that we appointed it. I just want to get sort of a broad answer to a question that I must admit is still unsettled in my mind. In your view, if the plan that you're proposing to offer is approved by town meeting, would this bring Brookline into compliance with the MBTA-CA? Because I hear you on the one hand referring to compliance and on the other hand referring to, but it would free us from certain guidelines, or we'd be freed from certain guidelines.
Yes, the answer is it would bring us into compliance. There are two, and I apologize for any confusion in the presentation. The MBTA compliance, the MBTA Act compliance requires us to demonstrate the capacity for 6,990 units. The multifamily or M district plan would accomplish that. As I said, the initial analysis done by the state said that we had far more capacity than we needed to actually comply, that we had 15,800 units, or under another count, over 16,600 units, as opposed to the 6,990. When I was referring to the flexibility that we would have, I was saying that if we complied with the MBTA Act, or I was trying to say that if we complied with the capacity requirements, the legal requirements of the MBTA Act, that would enable us to make zoning decisions and zoning changes in other areas without complying with the restrictions of the MBTA Communities Act. For example, we could mandate first floor commercial. That's not an issue in the multifamily residential neighborhoods, but it would be an issue if you wanted to use a commercial district or a commercial corridor area as your method of compliance. So the legal compliance that we are working toward, and we're going to wait for that final analysis from RKG, would be legal compliance with the MBTA Act. We could actually stop there. But we were also asked to look at other options. And I know that this board has been interested in melding perhaps some portions of Harvard Street with a compliant district. And we also have worked very hard, for example, on the BHA affordable housing and on other items.
Okay, Dick. Thank you. Thank you very
Fair
much.
enough?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. First, Miriam, and then Mike, but I want to just say one thing. So am I correct in saying that we are both complying with the MBTA, giving us some leeway with respect to Harvard Street, its development, and as a bonus, we're getting housing that is not just capacity to have housing, but actual potential construction of housing at the Brookline Housing Authority site. I mean, is that a good way of looking, or a correct way of looking at it?
The legal compliance with the MBTA Act does not actually require the construction of any units. And we have been not only looking for legal compliance, but also for opportunities for construction of units. And the BHA site is really front and center in that, largely and importantly because of the fact it is 100% affordable, and we would eliminate some of the ADA compliance issues that are there right now, particularly for seniors.
Yeah, I just wanted to make the point that that is a bonus to your plan, in your plan, that we wouldn't get if we just tried to comply and comply with the MBTA Act, as well as do the Harvard Street.
Well, this board asked us to try to do both, and we have made a good faith effort to do that.
Miriam?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dick, to you and your committee for this work. I have a couple of questions, one of which is playing off of Bernard's question, because you keep saying legal compliance. And I've been concerned from the beginning. I think I've stressed that legal compliance is akin to paper compliance, and I'm not interested in that. I want units. We need units. We need more housing units. So what I'd love to know, the bottom line is, what's the total number of new housing units? And then the other question I have is, well, I have two more, sorry. I'm concerned about some of these locations. I think some of them are brilliant. I'm like, wow, that's great. Some of them I'm really concerned about access to public transportation. Thank you very much, Bernard.
Read your
Public
mind.
transportation. Bernard and I clearly spending too much time together. Access to public transportation, because obviously it's the MBTAC communities, but part of good housing is actually access to that housing. If you don't own a car, if you don't have enough, owning a car is very expensive. So I want to make sure that's staying front and center. And then the third part is I both love and don't love the idea of affordable housing at BHA, because what I don't love is segregated housing. And that's what that screams to me. Okay, let's do legal compliance over here where we don't actually have to build anything.
Yeah.
And let's put all of the new affordable housing units over here away from everybody else. And I can't escape that feeling here. So I really want us to talk about it. And I'm happy to have Mike ask his questions first and then kick it back to Dick after that.
Okay.
Is
Mike, why don't
that
you-
okay? Or Dick, do you want to?
Or do you want to, well, however y'all want?
Or do you want, because I have it's something that's really part of, taking Miriam's and mine together, you'll have a package to respond to.
Okay, why don't you ask your question? We can
Okay,
get one answer instead of two.
okay, so it sort of in 25 words or less, I think about 20, what you're proposing is to use the M districts to give us compliance and allow us to avoid the restrictions regarding commercial and perhaps parking and perhaps other restrictions along Harvard Street. But the key question is, okay, well, what about Harvard Street? One question is, or one point is, you made a comment, it won't be necessary to dilute the town's requirements for trying to incentivize ground floor commercial. The incentive was to, as I understood it, was to offer developers the opportunity to build affordable housing that would meet the 70% AMI requirement rather than 50%. So they would
Correct.
have, that would have that much more rent potential, okay? One of our objectives is to get more workforce housing built. And so when you talk about BHA, that generally speaking is nowhere nearly 70% or even 50% of AMI. And I don't want us to rely on that as the only thing that we know we're likely to get from this whole process. And so one question is, well, what about that issue of, excuse me, more workforce housing? And another question is, how does this all affect what you're likely to recommend for Harvard Street? Will you make a recommendation regarding form-based zoning, or is that something that you will just let us deal with as a follow-on to the package that you put together, which I hasten to add, and I should have said this at the beginning, I think you've made an admirable effort to get going on this in a way that gives us an opportunity to get out from under the restrictions that we don't like in the MBTA Communities Act. But then we have to realize the opportunities that we get from not having those restrictions.
Let me just make a couple of comments. We, the committee, have not yet seen the Harvard Street proposal. We have understood that there are some elements that are contained in it. But ultimately, as I believe Chairman Green said at the beginning, or I'm sorry, Mr. Carey said at the beginning, this board, the select board, will be putting elements together. And that will ultimately be a decision that this board will have to balance and struggle with. Frankly, I have no answer to your concern about using the BHA property. We felt that and feel that unanimously as a committee that that is the right thing to do to provide affordable housing where we have a motivated developer who with the required zoning changes can utilize sources of funds that are available at the present time in order to create a couple of hundred new and or totally renovated units. And I guess I don't apologize for that.
No, don't,
Yeah.
yeah, don't mistake us. We're not saying don't do what you're proposing for for that property. On the contrary, that's a great idea.
Good.
But we
Okay.
don't want it to be the only.
Yes.
No, and as I indicated, it is not the only. This, as I indicated, opens up, if you want to use it, perhaps some options on portions of Harvard Street. We are waiting for the proposal for Chestnut Hill Village West for that 100 units there. We are looking at the Emerald Isle. And longer term, and this would be in the spring, we are looking at significant proposals from the Housing Advisory Board with regard to accessory dwelling units. So we're not washing our hands of the issue of providing actual housing units. There are a number of options that we have explicitly identified and that we will that I've tried to identify today and that we'll identify in our report.
Yeah. And by the way, what I was trying to say is that, we're going to be doing all of these proposals ultimately, but the BHA proposal is something that is going to happen or can happen quickly.
Oh, yeah.
And the others are a little more difficult, will take a little more time, but, we shouldn't wait for them in order to deal with real problems at the BHA properties, which need renovation. And we need more units. So anyway,
100%.
okay.
Yeah.
Any other comments, questions? Well, thank you, Dick. I appreciate your presentation and also the incredible work of the committee. I think you've come up with some ideas that are going to be very, very helpful for us going forward, and will be maybe models for even other communities.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
Okay. Next, we're going to hear from the planning department and their proposal for the MBTA. For the Harvard Street corridor, which is a little different from the Harvard Street plan that the committee has come up with, but is being presented just so we have the information that they have developed in putting together their corridor plan, so that when we meld them all together, we're fully informed of all the issues. And I understand that instead of the mandates that are prohibited by the MBTA Communities Act, you have a number of incentives, which are kind of interesting, and I hope you talk about them. Incentives that may, end up in our final product that may be different from what, our final product, even though the Harvard Street piece of it may be different from what you're offering. So,
yeah.
Ms.
So
Bruton.
good evening. I'm Kara Bruton, the Director of Planning. I am so excited to be here tonight to both for you all to give feedback and take in the work that the multifamily permitting committee has been working so hard on, but also that Harvard Street work that will be released this Friday in a full first draft, and Maria will be giving a preview of that tonight. Before we get to the Harvard Street proposal, I just wanted to, I thought it would be helpful for me to clarify a couple things about the number of units in housing that could be built because of the committee's work. The and I think most of the board knows this, but for the sake of the audience, our great audience listening at home, that BHA property, if not for the MBTA Act, if not for us doing any zoning change, would likely move forward. They have in the past, the community has supported them being able to move through a 40B process in a friendly way. So that's another avenue. So it's not like those units couldn't be built without this action. However, what it does mean is that permitting process would be significantly faster. So a 40B process can often take 6 months to a year, and as of right process might take 3 to 6 months, for example. But it is not releasing something that otherwise couldn't be done. Similarly, the work that we are trying to get together for Chestnut Hill Village is a proposal that a developer has pulled together some individual properties. He is working with the immediate neighborhood, with town meeting members in that area. We will be hearing that proposal. I have not seen it yet at a committee meeting in the future, and also, hope to get the feedback of what the neighbors think about that firsthand. If the zoning for that property doesn't move forward, that developer is filing a 40B application this fall. So again, that is not housing that wouldn't happen, but for this zoning, it is a better option according to the precinct town meeting members that live in that area. They would much rather us try to get zoning that works rather than go through a 40B avenue. And then finally, the Emerald Isle area, that is something that I do think this zoning change is unlocking. So, and as Dick said, right now the zoning there only gives bonus incentives for height if you are a micro unit or age restricted unit in your proposal, and the zoning that we're cobbling together would allow much more flexibility by having it be any multifamily unit. And so I do think that is truly, truly unlocking additional housing unit count there. So I just wanted to kind of tease out so nobody's getting half the story. This has all been talked about in various public meetings, but just wanted to pull it all together. So I'm excited to continue our conversation, and I'll turn it over now to Maria.
Thank you, Kara. Good evening. I'm Maria Morelli, Senior Planner in the Regulatory Division. And on behalf of the Planning Department and Director Bruton, I'm thrilled to give you this update. This is a celebratory milestone culminating in the community's work, shaping regulations that will ensure the continued success of Harvard Street, which is a historic Main Street district. We are delivering to you this Friday a draft of an complete new zoning for Harvard Street, and it promises to make this neighborhood more accessible to those who want to shop, live, and do business here. And this is all while codifying the characteristics that the community cherishes and desires to see and continue to see, and also addresses some of those quality of life issues that they don't want to replicate. So the purpose here is, of course, out of courtesy to you, to prepare you for what we will be publishing and posting for the public this Friday. We are going to be launching phase 3, which are some site visualizations. You'll get to see some creative ways this new zoning could work in the district on really large sites. It's kind of a stress test, not a revitalization plan. It's just really an exercise. And also phase 4. So we've scheduled about 5 weeks to vet this draft with the public, with various boards, before anything would be submitted to town meeting, if you so choose. And ultimately, we want to report to the select board and the public on all aspects of staff's due diligence and community engagement during this zoning development, and how we're intending to meet town goals. Okay, it's a little slow. Okay. And so the community is at the center of every aspect of this zoning proposal. We could not do it without the community. Thanks to emergency funding from the select board, we were able to hire Opticos Design. They are the preeminent firm for form-based zoning, and they facilitated really intense community workshops over the last 4 months. Form-based zoning, as you know, is context-based. It meets you where you are, where your community already is, where your place already is. It's not about doing something in an ivory tower. It's really about meeting people where they are and what they desire to see in their built environment, and getting those objective, measurable design standards kind of reverse engineered to match what the community wants to see, and places that matches that in the dimensional requirements in the zoning. So in August, we'll walk through the zoning and you'll see how that's integrated. They're very different from, say, design guidelines, which are very, like, could be arbitrary and vague. So where we are right now, of course, is phase 3 with the site visualizations. We'll be looking at 2 100,000 square foot sites, not because we intend to propose a plan for them, but because we want to look at outliers, just to see, kind of do a stress test, just to see how the zoning would perform with unusually sized lots. And these are going to be beautiful renderings done by hand that'll really show you the care that Opticos Design has given to this process. And then, of course, phase 4, we're going to meet with the planning board next week on the 2nd, the Preservation Commission on the 8th, before we come to you with their comments on the 15th. Okay. Oops, sorry. So one aspect of our due diligence, of course, is making sure that the town is meeting its obligation to comply with or abide by constitutional due process. Local governments do have authority, police power to regulate private land, but it does have to be balanced with an individual's right to enjoy their land. And that's the first step that we undertook almost 2 years ago, was a data collection and a technical study. We wanted to understand what the legal barriers were to multi-unit development, because it is allowed. 3.5 to 4-story buildings are allowed, but 40A is not used to produce anything the way 40B or maybe BHA properties are. Because you can regulate aesthetics, we also carefully and painstakingly cataloged over 120 measurements on each building that was considered an exemplary building of each block. We identified that as a foundation to come to the community with something that says, here's a collection of what your place type already is. That was the basis for the conversation. In no way was it a foretold plan. The record of community engagement has been astounding. We've had about 300 workshop participants. We've seen a lot of new faces. And I really do want to commend town meeting members who really did their homework trying to have meetings with their constituents to prepare for these workshops so they could really have a meaningful contribution. Okay. All right, so another pillar of this due diligence is evidence about how decisions get made. And what we have here, the community, of course, when you have a building, it does meet the public realm. The community is going to experience that. There are things that they will cherish, and there will things that maybe present quality of life issues. We wanted to hear it all. And the community was very prepared about concerns, and they got really excited about saying, you know, what can we do about this, or what about this? Can we have this? And it was very gratifying to work on these problems with the community. This is just a smattering of some of the things that we heard over and over. And what you see on the right are the zoning solutions that will be in the draft. We hear a lot about parking. There's a lot of nuance around that, in particular, residential use. And what we're seeing right now is that the parking demand really isn't more than 1 parking space per unit, but we do understand if there's an ownership opportunity, or if there's a particular desire in the developer to provide more, we don't want to get in the way of that. What we're doing is just decoupling special permit provisions from what seems to be ordinary and applying that special permit provision if you want to exceed the parking maximum. The current zoning already has a shared parking provision, and we want to leverage that a little bit more. So shared parking is only on private parcels. It means if there are times of the day when there aren't peak periods where those parking spaces are used, maybe a retail employee needs that space, or maybe a caregiver needs it. So shared parking is something that cities, urban areas rely on a lot. And we have a modest proposal that would allow caregivers and retail employees to take advantage of that. Accessible units. Accessibility was a common theme at every single workshop. And we would exceed the state requirements by ensuring that there's an ADA parking space for each ADA unit. The loss of on-street parking was something that came up. And I just want to remind folks that, this is really very much a pedestrian street. We don't want to introduce new curb cuts. So that's something that we can prohibit subject to DPW's approval. And that will conserve as many on-street parking spaces as possible, though that on-street parking supply, that centralized parking is very important for Main Street districts, and we would not get in the way of that. I'm not going to go through all of these, but as you can see, they have to do with the physical, like access to light and sky. We got very specific feedback about abutters, how these buildings, not just how they meet the public realm on Harvard Street, but how are they going to transition to smaller residential neighborhoods? And we're really excited about some solutions that we can give. And these are actually zoning solutions that the community chose. So that 10-foot rear yard setback, and also an additional 10-foot step back at the top floor on the 4th floor is something that we were able to show in site sections how effective that could be if you are in a 2-family district. Preservation of 19th century buildings. I'm really thrilled to say that we're going above and beyond to conserve those buildings in the Brookline Village National Register District, and also that very sweet block where Autrefois is, which is not in the NRD. We're actually going to conserve those 2.5-story forms. You probably hear a lot about rats and rodent control. And I think maybe 85% of the problem is, you're dealing with older properties that don't have accommodations for that trash storage within a building footprint or an enclosure. And we will draw on what we see with our new development. The health department has been very great, very good about providing these stipulations, these conditions in new development, but requiring staff storage in an enclosed building footprint, that's really easy and very effective. And we can also do something for those businesses that don't have footprint for that. We would just have enclosures outside. Okay. So the biggest impact that the community had was on the district itself, really reinforcing this place type. So zoning is much more than just how does one building look on a lot. It's really about how does that district, what story does it tell? You want your regulating plan and you want your zoning to tell a story from stem to stern about the intent and the character description for this district. So for instance, we were able to have a little bit more nuance. This isn't one monolithic district. There are 3 core zoning districts: Main Street, which dovetails with Brookline Village, Coolidge Corner, and JFK Crossing, your 3 core business districts. It also has a little bit of nuance where you can't see it very well, but the white crosshatch is where we can have not just active uses, but even more quiet passive uses. That's where you see the residential looking areas of JFK Crossing. And that was in response to community feedback. They actually wanted some quieter uses in those areas, and we were able to provide that. Because we want to link those core business districts and really create an entire experience for the pedestrian going from up and down Harvard Street, we have transitional zones where you see between School Street and Stearns. We have what is called Main Street transitional zone, which allows for more varied frontages. People wanted to see opportunities for cafe seating, courtyards. And that's actually an opportunity to increase linear feet of retail with these new frontage types. And you'll see that in the site visualizations if you attend on Tuesday. So all in all, this was a way to tell a story about this district, really, polish this gem and create visual links among the three business areas while maintaining those visual distinctions in each zone for variety. Okay, so these are small snippets, but this is your actual zoning. These are pages from the zoning for Harvard Street, and it looks really different from what we're accustomed. We see a lot more photos and diagrams. We see charts. You don't need a lawyer or an architect to help you understand what is intended, what can be built in your district. If you're a developer, you can readily understand what the town wants. And if you are a board serving as a review authority, you understand how far you can go with conditions. Often you want to apply conditions on a project, but you don't have the regulations to back up your findings. And here, what you'll see is everything is measurable. It's feet. It's not percentages. It's not ratios. For instance, we are doubling the required commercial space to 30 feet because it's feasible. We did feasibility testing. We did financial feasibility testing. So this isn't about just making things look pretty. It's about making sure that it's economically feasible and it would work. It would also function feasibly. So in addition to the regulating plan, the form-based zoning, objective design standards, there's also a layer of architectural preservation standards for the Brookline Village district. And there's also an entirely new site plan and design review process. As you know, with MBTA communities, this is as of right permitting. People are accustomed to having a public process, and we can do that with site plan and design review for both as of right and special permits. And what that does is it expands the planning board's authority to review site plans, and it affords the public a public hearing process to talk about impacts and better shape those plans. Another aspect of the zoning was really to look at not just what we want. So when you hear mandate, it's just a way of saying, we want this, but we can do better than that. We want to ensure success. We want to ensure Main Street success. So we've put together really a coordinated program. It's very much integrated. It starts with, of course, the ground floor design. There is evidence that the way you design those ground floors really enhances the pedestrian's experience, slows people down, gets people to stay, browse, and spend money in your district. We were also able to look at the table of uses to see where things might be inconsistent with what we're seeing in the district, or what we're trying to, maybe there are local small shops that are in districts with very high store limits. We want to better protect them. In addition, one way to minimize displacement was really to look to that historic 3.5 to 4 story cap. That is one way to minimize displacement, because any taller than that, people with lucrative retail might actually be tempted to redevelop. So 4 stories serves as the sweet spot for both facilitating growth, but also not accelerating it at a fast pace. I'm going to tell you a little bit more on the next slide about this exciting ground floor commercial incentive that actually has reciprocal benefits with affordable housing, in particular for workforce housing. And what retailers say all the time, we need more people. Well, housing in proximity is one way to bring more customers, more diverse customers, more access, more inclusive design, increasing the range of affordability, which is great for thriving main streets. So a little bit about this ground floor commercial incentive, and I especially want to thank the Economic Development Advisory Board and the Housing Advisory Board, who really came together and worked to make sure this would be successful. In particular, I want to thank Sandy Silk, who is a developer and who also serves on the Economic Development Advisory Board. So in a nutshell, if you provide ground floor commercial, then you have the provision to provide the affordable housing that would be required It would expand the income limits from 50% AMI to 70% AMI for rental and 80% AMI to 100% AMI for condos. Now, this is a provision that exists in section 408, which is your inclusionary zoning bylaw. We would be tweaking it just a little bit. As if you read that bylaw, you'll see that there is a supplemental fee associated with these higher income limits. We would redirect that supplemental fee from the housing trust. This is with the HAB's blessing, to the landlord's basic build out of that ground floor commercial space. So they don't just get this money back, they have to provide evidence that they're using it for the build out of the ground floor commercial space. And what this does, not only is it a permanent physical investment in ground floor, but it's going to assist those first generation retailers who are responsible for everything. This is their financial burden. That build out is a savings of like, 6 figures for a local mom and pop. And we think that financial benefit will better assist landlords trying to attract local retailers. They ask us all the time, how can you help us compete with out-of-state investors? Okay, and one thing I do want to say about that, so the workforce housing, that is a provision of the HAB makes it very clear that we need affordable housing at all income levels, and there really hasn't been a way to stimulate it, even though it is a provision in the inclusionary zoning bylaw. So we feel like this incentive would stimulate that. Workforce housing, we know, is a goal of yours. It's a charge you've given staff, and we feel like this would be a way to better meet that goal. So at the heart of this, we did not want paper compliance. We wanted to be able to facilitate new housing growth because there is capacity for new housing growth on Harvard Street. Property owners do want to improve their properties, and they've been using 40B as a way to get around zoning that does not work. So we've calculated that there could be modest pace of redevelopment to create about 800 new units over 48 acres on just the Harvard Street parcels. There is a 15 acre portion that we are zoning because it abuts Harvard Street, and we want to show that district, that multifamily district, some care and some love, since they're going to be abutting another comparable district of comparable intensity. In the St. Paul to Stearns area, there probably won't be some infill development possible, but at least there will be some coherence because it's directly adjacent to Harvard Street. So that's why I'm using 48 acres and not including the additional 15 acres in this calculation. It's easy to think of TJ Maxx and Stop and Shop as providing the bulk of these units. That's why I took them out of this calculation. So excluding those two parcels, which are about 4 acres, we could see redevelopment of one-story lots around 800 units. The residential projects will have affordable on-site. And the reason for that is we've done feasibility testing. You're going to need certain critical mass because of the housing, the land costs, the land acquisition costs on Harvard Street. So a 10,000 square foot lot with ground floor commercial, you're going to want about 30 units to get a return on the investment. And that far exceeds the 11 unit threshold in the zoning that was just passed by town meeting. And as I said, we've had professionally prepared pro formas to confirm that this would be physically and financially feasible. The key thing here is that this will better integrate and not segregate racial and social diversity. Inclusionary zoning is a fundamental way to integrate racial and social diversity. None of the affordable units you see on Harvard Street were created under your zoning. And, we do hear, as much as this is a celebratory occasion, I would be remiss if I didn't mention something equally of substance. Staff fielded a lot of tough questions. We met with a lot of groups. A lot of people followed up with us privately. One gentleman who is Black and lives in Brookline said that he feels the only diversity on Harvard Street is on the Route 66 bus, which, as you know, connects Nubian Square to Harvard Square. And that really stuck out in my mind and redefined our purpose. We were very keen on implementing policies that fight racism and segregation. And I'm very proud, can look you in the eye and can look this gentleman in the eye and say, I think we've done a really good job with the community to work toward that goal. Okay, part of our due diligence, we scoped as many risks and unintended consequences as we could think of with a lot of, sharp people in the community who said, what about? And we were glad to take it on. The thing about, okay, so if you don't have special permits, how do you ensure compliance with design intent? And that solution is a robust site plan and design review, which probably has, I think, more safeguards than the existing design review framework. The non-luxury housing and the subsidized housing, I think I've mentioned that there are ways to stimulate that if you can just unlock the zoning and achieve 4-story buildings on Harvard Street. The racial segregation I spoke of, displacement of businesses, again, that height is the sweet spot. I've actually talked to some property owners who have 1- and 2-story retail that is lucrative. And I'm like, you have lucrative retail here. You're probably getting a lot of money per square foot. Would you be tempted to redevelop with 4-story zoning? And they're like, we've done the numbers. We would high rises, 6-story buildings would tempt us, but not 4 stories. So it's a great way to facilitate. We know that developers would develop for 4 stories, but it's also not going to, I guess, make people too eager to do it and leave behind, what already exists if it's working. The loss of ground floor retail to residential, a professional pro forma confirmed that the ground floor retail is highest and best use. It will bring in more per square foot than parking or residential, but we're not going to make assumptions. That's why a very appealing financial benefit was conceived. And to wrap some numbers around it, that increase from 50% to 70% AMI will increase the value of each unit on average by $150,000. That is something that you can't ignore if you are a developer and that pro forma is your Bible. That is all but makes it certain that ground floor commercial will be an actuality. And of course, we want functional commercial space and we want it codified in our zoning. And that's why we use feet, not percentages. So it's the minimum depth would be increased to 30 feet, not 15, because that's functional. Competition for public parking. I think people might be conflating 2 issues that are going on here. We do want parking for destination visitors, and residents who are going to be living in these projects are not destination visitors. People are not going to drive 1/10 of a mile unless they need mobility assistance. They're not going to drive 1/10 of a mile to go to the Coolidge Corners Theater. They're not competing for parking spaces for destination visitors. In fact, if you do provide more parking, more local people will drive and competing for those spaces. The other thing is that we're not seeing a huge demand for each unit. We've had professional studies done as recently as 2022, and it places it between 0.3 and 0.7 per unit. Because Brookline has a very strict on-street parking policy, residents don't get the option to decide, I'm going to park in the public way. I'm not paying to lease a parking space, in my apartment building. You can do that in Brighton. You can do that in my neighborhood. You cannot do that in Brookline. So anything lower than these ratios is really the developer's risk. So we don't like parking minimums because they steal precious square feet from retail. And we want to optimize our retail space, and we don't want to add to housing costs. And the last thing is we can't mandate below grade parking. There isn't the depth. You need like 120 feet. You can't necessarily ramp down. It's also very expensive per parking space, like 5 times per space than a surface lot. A little bit more related to the climate side of things, this is an exciting time to actually look at policy documents, stuff that DPW has worked on and apply them. So we are working with DPW to see what is feasible for compact urban areas to mitigate the impact of pollutants in the groundwater and so forth, and where we can actually increase our tree canopy in North Brookline. It's not impossible, and we're actually thinking through some of that problem solving. The last slide is, again, the public draft is available on Friday. We are vetting it with 3 boards, the 2nd, the 8th, and then with you on the 15th. And I hope you will participate August 1st at 12:30 on the site visualizations. Glad to answer any questions.
Mike.
So thank you very much. And I think we've all followed this as carefully as we possibly can. And we know that both you and the committee looking at alternatives done a huge amount of work. And you, I know, have been working on this for a very long time. So it's really impressive to see this come forward. One of the things that I want to ask about is a sort of a detail in the weeds kind of thing. But when you talk about preserving historical look on the street and so forth, and I also I looked at the proposed design requirements that came out of the Dick's committee, and for example, on page 556 of our packet, it's, for example, the materials, permissible wall cladding materials, natural or cast stone and so forth. Additional materials may be utilized, but there's here it is. Materials that mimic wood clapboard with reveal width not greater than 7 inches. That's one of the requirements that's in there. And then for fenestration, windows shall predominantly be multi-pane windows, including casement windows. I'm thinking about across the street from me, there is a 1930s building with metal single pane casement windows that are you know, multi-pane. The energy efficiency of those approaches 0. You may as well leave the window open in the wintertime. But multi-pane windows to me means expense. Okay? And for example, when I look at this, and I appreciate this isn't yours, but you know, a reveal of not greater than 7 inches, and then I looked at what the building that Bakey is going to be in. It's not clad with it wouldn't conform to this And so the question that I have is, yes, we want to preserve the overall historic look. We don't want to turn ourselves into Nantucket. And at least I don't want to turn ourselves into Nantucket. And the risk of being too prescriptive is that we'll end up with something that doesn't give developers flexibility and also creates a rather boring street if everything looks kind of the same. So maybe you can respond to that. I appreciate that it's a detail, perhaps an excruciating one, but it's important as we get into this to recognize that the details are very important when it comes to design standards.
I'm going to try to answer the first half of that question, and then Marie can follow up. The multifamily permitting committee is having that exact conversation. And when they held their public hearing, they heard a lot of comments similar to that. They have not voted on the zoning draft that's in front of you.
That's here. Yeah.
That's there. So, you know, it's kind of the direction that things are headed for sure. This coming Friday, they will be focusing on exactly that language about windows, and it's very likely multi-pane is going to come out. If, you know, I don't want to be a betting person, but that's what I'm betting. And so that's not a final draft. It may very well get pared back as far as what's being.
Right. And I appreciate that. But I want to use that as an example of my concern, even about form-based zoning.
Yes, yes. And that's an excellent question, because one thing that we actually address head on is that we have to make this economic. You know, form-based zoning is prescriptive. It does prescribe standards, but how far do you go? This is not a local historic district. And the marvelous thing with because we're working with Opticos is that we have a firm that's worked all over the country, rural areas, urban areas, and everything in between. Not necessarily areas like Brookline where there's, a higher cost of living. So they're very sensitive to costs. The practitioners we work with also have experience working in the private sector with developers. So what you'll see is really a balance. It's really a lot of the stuff that we're seeing, we just want to make sure that it's durable, that it's good quality, that it feels like a common thread, that we can integrate contemporary buildings and architectural styles with the more traditional. So we're trying to bridge that gap with materials that make sense. And again, it's hard to do that without talking about, without looking at pictures. But we do have a section on materials, exterior materials. And I think that it does achieve a really good balance. And again, I'm grateful to have an expert like Opticos to have that reality check.
Thank you.
Miriam.
Very quick question, and apologize for not knowing this in advance. When you say site visualizations, what do you
Yes,
mean?
thank you. Yes, I should have used a better word. So the zoning, of course, is really about looking at maybe small sketches and diagrams and tables. We want to put it all together. What does this look like if you had a perspective design? So we're looking at renderings of something of if one of those sites were developed, how would the zoning achieve that? Yes.
John, did you have your hand up?
I did. Thanks very much. Thank you very much, Maria. And thank you to all the people who have done so much work on this. I'm trying to wrap my head around what all this is going to mean at the end of the day, if there is significant development resulting. So I'm just going to ask a few questions which kind of require, sort of a leap forward as to what the future Harvard Street might look like. Will there be, if this works according to plan, there'll be considerably more housing developed. It will be not on the first floor buildings. It'll be on the second, third, et cetera, floor buildings. There'll be commercial on the first floor.
Mhm.
And what about parking?
Yeah. So we stipulate a parking maximum of 1 parking space per dwelling unit.
Okay.
And there is a provision for that in our current zoning so that you can buy special permit in the transportation overlay district. You can actually go to the select board and request 0 parking. for
And
the
where is it
project.
envisioned that would go? Would it be
Where would the parking go?
stacked parking inside the
Yep, so
frame?
we've worked with developers to look at different lots
Yeah.
and a program. So how much storefront would there be, how many units, and how many parking spaces? And one configuration is you can have your 30 feet deep of storefront, and then behind that on the surface within the building footprint,
Yeah.
you could have, say, 20 parking spaces. I'm just thinking of one scenario that we had worked on. And then on the upper 3 floors, you could have 30 units.
But that would require driveways and people going in and out, right?
It requires driveways, but not within 40 feet of the front line of Harvard Street. So one thing that we have put in practice is really having driveways on side streets, but having them look more residential in keeping with, if there's a residential district, more in keeping with the residential district. So no curb cuts on Harvard Street.
Absolutely no curb cuts on Harvard Street.
Right. So there are some sites like Stop and Shop and TJ Maxx, which have no other access. They have traffic signals, they have existing curb cuts, and we wouldn't take those away. And of course, DPW always has jurisdiction. But the Transportation Board and the Transportation Administrator has in practice frowned on giving any new curb cuts on Harvard Street, including the development projects on Harvard Street that I worked on.
And the reason I'm focusing on these issues is because what seems to have been economically feasible so far in terms of recent developments that we've seen on Harvard Street is buildings that have some kind of parking within the building and a curb cut.
On Harvard Street, there are no curb cuts on Harvard Street.
But all right, so what is the one I'm thinking of? I guess you're correct that they are buildings that are on corners,
Mhm.
and then they have a side street.
Yeah.
But of course, there aren't side streets all up and down Harvard Street. I mean,
The majority are, John, there are some outliers,
yeah.
where you have maybe some mid-block lots. We're not here to guarantee that every single parcel can have parking, can have a driveway.
Mhm.
But for the most part, these blocks are short. You might have just like two lots on a block.
Okay.
Most of them are corner lots. And people know when they buy a property, if they don't have driveway access, they factor it in to the price, to the land acquisition costs.
Okay, that gives me a better picture. Thank you very much.
Of course.
Any other questions? Thank you, Maria. It's very,
welcome.
very informative. The slide deck was very helpful, at least to me, and appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to our grant of locations. We have 4 of these this evening. First, grant of location, public hearing, Beach Road. And we are running behind. This was scheduled for 7 p.m. We apologize. But that's how the select board operates. We have to complete our work. Is Ross Bilodeau in for Verizon?
Just promoted Ross
promoted?
on Zoom.
Okay.
Ross, you can unmute and share your video when you're ready.
Yes, good evening. Ross Bilodeau, representing Verizon New England. How are you?
I'm fine.
Okay.
Speaking for myself, at any rate.
We're fine.
We're all fine.
We're all fine.
That's good.
So you
this
want to
was-
describe what it is you want our approval of?
Yes, sir. This was for the, sorry, I might have missed which one you're asking for first when it was bringing me in. This is for Beach Road, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, very good. We're looking to place one new 4-inch PVC conduit approximately 238 feet northeasterly from an existing manhole 132, which is situated at the intersection of Kent Street and Beach Road, heading in a northeasterly direction to an existing handhold situated on the northerly side of Beach Road. This is necessary for providing some new services.
Okay.
The handhold was to be placed by Crown Castle, was my understanding. So we're just connecting to that handhold.
Okay. Paul?
Just a quick question related to Beach Road. So this is the Longwood Mall.
Yeah.
Where all these beautiful old beech trees are. And some of them are actually failing quite significantly. Do you anticipate, I don't know what the distance is from the trees? Will this interrupt roots? Where's the digging going to be, and how will it, do you anticipate running into some problems with the trees?
At this time, no, I don't. I know the digging is going to happen in the actual pavement of the street itself. So it's not going in the sidewalk or anything like that. It's just going right up the actual traveled way. So we'll have a trench up the traveled way between the handhole and the existing manhole.
Okay, so up the middle, like the center of the road, or?
I don't have an exact distance in front of me, to be honest with you, how far off the curb or how far off the center line. But it's somewhere in that vicinity, yes.
Okay. And how long is this street going to be dug up for this?
Probably a few days, to be honest with you.
Okay. Mike?
Thanks. So it's 230 feet, is that correct?
Yeah, about 233 feet, correct.
And does it go all the way to Hawes Street, or does it stop short of that? Hawes Street is the street that it's at the far end of Beach Road.
No, it stops short of that. So it only goes about 2 to 3 parcels up Beach Road. So.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So this is a public hearing. I'd like to open the hearing and see if there's anyone who'd like to speak on or about
Zoom.
this?
Yeah, so we have 16 attendees. Please use the hand raise or Q&A feature to indicate that you would like to speak. If there's anybody here who'd like to speak, just let us know in person. But again, we have 16 attendees right now, and currently no one is using the hand raise or Q&A feature to indicate that they would like to speak.
Okay,
Give it
we'll
just a
wait a
moment.
few seconds.
So raise your hand or let us know in Q&A.
Okay, so let's close the hearing. And unless there are any other questions, I'd like to call for a vote. Yeah, I move approval of the grant of location request from Crown Castle and Verizon New England, Inc. for permission to construct and a location for such a line of conduits and manholes with the necessary cables therein under the following public ways. Beach Road, and it gives a description of where on Beach Road. Let's see. I'll read the description. Verizon conduit running northeasterly from existing manhole 132 at the intersection with Kent Street, a distance of about 233 feet. Thence turning and running northwesterly, a distance of about 2 feet to a new Crown Castle handhole in the northerly side of Beach Road. Crown Castle conduit running northwesterly, a distance of about 2 feet, thence turning and running northeasterly, a distance of about 5 feet from the new handhole to an existing handhole. Did you have something to?
No, I'm just, no, I know that street very, very, very well. I'm just
Okay.
thinking about the state of the street after this is all done.
Yeah. Any rate, I move approval of said grant of location. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John,
I
Miriam. Pardon me?
Does this grant have to be?
We just had.
just had it. Yeah.
I opened.
We haven't moved
No
to the
one
next
wanted
one
to
yet.
talk. I closed.
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, are you here for another one also?
The next
Yes,
one,
sir. I have another two, but I believe.
Oh,
on the
yeah.
agenda There's,
the next one up was National Grid, but you could take. Yeah,
Yeah,
take
you
out-
Is National Grid here?
yes, but.
Yeah, let's take the order that, he's here, so let's
Okay.
let him get, let's let him
Next
go.
would be Chestnut
get
Hill
breakfast.
Ave.
Next, question of approving a grant of location request from Verizon New England to Chestnut Hill for Chestnut Hill Avenue conduit. Let's see. Okay, this is a public hearing on Chestnut Hill for the Chestnut Hill grant of location.
Yes.
Mr. Bilodeau, please tell us about this one.
Okay,
And
sure.
tell me whether I pronounced your name correctly. I apologize if I didn't.
No, no problem. Billadoo is 100% correct, so
Great. Okay.
thank you. This one is similar to the last one, placing two new 4-inch conduits approximately 103 feet northwesterly from an existing manhole 38 over 502A, which is situated on the southerly side of Chestnut Hill Avenue and continuing into Brighton to an existing shared handhole, which again, I believe was to be placed by Crown Castle. Again, this is for providing new services. I do wanted to, like I said, it does cross into Brighton. This was approved by the Boston Water and Sewer we received approval on May 19th. We also have an NWRA permit, which was also approved.
Okay, any questions from the select board?
It's my neighborhood.
Nothing here.
Okay, this is a public hearing. I'd like to open the public hearing. And Charlie, tell me if anyone's interested in speaking.
Okay, on Chestnut Hill Ave, if anybody would like to speak, please use the hand raise or Q&A feature on Zoom to let us know that you would like to speak. So raise your hand or indicate in Q&A that you would like to speak at this public hearing. Give it just a minute. 15 attendees, and currently no one is using the hand raise or Q&A feature.
Okay, so let's close the public hearing, and unless there are any questions or comments from the select board, I'd like to move approval of this grant of location. Okay, I move approval of a grant of location request from Verizon New England, Inc. for Chestnut Hill Avenue, conduit running southeasterly from the town line with Boston, a distance of about 88 feet, thence turning and running southerly, a distance of about 14 feet to existing manhole number 38/502A. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John?
Aye.
Miriam?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Next, Mr. Billadu, we have a grant of location public hearing for Warren Street. Tell us about that.
Yes, sir. This one's a little different than the last two. We're looking to place, again, two new 4-inch PVC conduits from an existing pole 9/43, which is located on the westerly side of Warren Street, to run them about approximately 50 feet southeasterly across the street to a private property line of 126 Warren Street. This is to make an aerial to underground conversion, which was sparked by this customer at 126 Warren Street. Basically, they have a couple poles on that property, which they're doing some construction, etc., that I'm not really privy to, and they like to have those lines put underground. So we're asking for the conduit to do that.
Okay, are there any issues that we have with this type of a project? Okay.
No, not on our end.
Other than encouraging underground utilities, I guess.
Right.
Any questions from the select board or comments from the select board? John?
Just so that we all understand, this is entirely paid for by the customer?
Or the electric company?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I wasn't made privy of that information.
Well,
I could certainly have.
Whether the town is paying for any of it. And the answer is no.
Oh, no, I don't, no, not at all.
But it sounds like this is in the category of a service that is provided for those people who do not like to have utility poles outside their property, can have the utilities moved underground, but it's at their expense that it is done, I assume. Because
Yes, I'd say-
whenever this comes up as something that the town might want to do for beautification purposes, you know, we're told it would be too expensive for the town to do, but individuals can do it on their street if they wish.
Well, sure. Every situation is going to be different than the next. So I don't know what they have for cabling versus some other spots. You know, some could be more involved than other projects. But no, I would say that a customer is probably paying for this work to be done.
Okay.
Mike?
So I think this is on the customer's private property. It's different than putting it on the public way.
That's what it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's an answer to John's very sensible
Sure.
question. That, you know, we do get asked that question a lot, and we don't want to pay for putting it under the public way, but private property, if somebody wants to do it, fine.
Sure.
Okay, this is a public hearing. I'd like to open the public hearing for public comment, if any. Charlie, who is queued up to speak?
So we have 14 attendees in Zoom. Once again, folks, use the hand raise or Q&A feature on Zoom to let us know that you'd like to speak. No one is using either feature at this time. We'll give it just a minute. So click the raise hand or use Q&A to indicate that you'd like to make a comment at this public hearing.
No one?
No one is using the hand raise or Q&A feature.
Okay, I'd like to then close this public hearing, and unless there are any comments or questions from the board, I'd like to move approval. I move approval of the grant of location request from Verizon New England, Inc. for Warren Street, a conduit running southeasterly from an existing pole 9 1/43, pole number 9/43 across from Welch Road, a distance of about 50 feet to 126 Warren Street. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John?
Aye.
Miriam?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Okay, next, we apologize for having you wait longer, but we wanted to get him back to whatever he's doing. Okay, sorry for the interruption there, but we are back. And we're still listening to Ms. Mulroney talk about the grant of the location. You want to finish?
I did finish, but I.
Oh, okay.
Again.
In the chaos, I missed that.
We were hanging on every word.
Okay, any questions from the select board? Okay, so this is a public hearing. Let's open up the public hearing, Charlie.
Sure. Do we have anybody in person who would like to speak?
Okay, so we have one
Please
person.
approach the presentation station. For folks who are on Zoom, please use the hand raise or Q&A feature to indicate that you would like to speak, and we will set you up to go next.
I've never done this before.
Pull the microphone down.
I've lived in my house on Newton Street for 62 years. And we have suffered terribly over the last at least 10 years from traffic, from whole things coming out of the ground that were never there. But we have, the gas company has really been very nice, and they've taken care of their area as best they can. But it's quite different from having 4, 5 foot little pipes coming up.
Excuse me, could you talk into the mic?
Yes, it's
Because the
different to
TV
have
audience.
4 pipes sticking up out of the ground rather than have a 10-foot pipe coming out of the ground, which is what they propose to do. I understand why they're doing it. I understand it's going to prevent us from having a huge fire like they had a few years ago up in the northern part. But it seems absolutely incredible that they have to go 10 feet up in the ground. Plus, they're also going to add another 5-foot pipe coming up out of the ground. And they claim that they're going to cover it all up with trees. Well, I'm 87 years old, and believe me, I'm not going to live long enough for their tree to go 10 foot up in the air. It just doesn't, it certainly doesn't enhance the town of Brookline at all. Why should South Brookline have to be the recipient of all of this? I understand that the place here where they now have all their equipment is the whole town of Brookline relies on the equipment that's in that area, right there. Why didn't they put it in the middle of the town? Why did they have to put it out there where they used to have lovely trees, and they used to take care of that island, which they don't anymore. The town doesn't. It's a mess. I really am objecting to a 10-foot pole in addition to everything else that they've got in that island. And I think you ought to go out and look and see what it's going to look like. I also, from what he's telling me tonight, seem to think that 10-foot pole is down closer to the entrance to the golf course. Am I right?
Yeah,
It's a good question.
Sure.
Victor Santana, Community and Customer Management, National Grid, Business Office of 170 Medford Street in Malden, Massachusetts. So a couple points of clarifications, just to kind of bring some clarity. Specifically to the recommendation that was given by the town of Brookline in terms of the beautification of the area. We can understand how this structure can be unsightly to some. That's why we engaged and we welcomed and accepted the recommendations of the town in order to do our best to beautify the area. We're not claiming that this is going to hide it away. It's just a way to mitigate this work that is required. In terms of the actual stack, there's actually an operational reason as to why it needs to be that high, 10 feet tall. So when we get, the company policy requires that when there is gas venting during an abnormal condition, it needs to happen at a at a height that's higher than the tallest person. So usually we average between 7 and 10 feet. So that way there's no immediate gas being, dumped around people. And then we can safely perform our repairs, our maintenance in terms of an abnormal condition. Speaking to Mrs. Miller's point about the existing vents that we have out there right now, from speaking to operations, we may have an opportunity to work on the existing ones. There's about 3, I want to say about 4 feet, 4. Thank you. There may be an opportunity for us to lower that, as those vents is only for circulating fresh air. It doesn't serve an operational safety purpose. In terms of the pressure relief valve itself, it's actually a new standard for us. It's best practice across the industry. National Grid has adopted it as a standard, given in light of recent events. It just brings additional safety layers, resiliency to our infrastructure. And one last point to clarify, it's not that that regulator pit, the existing facilities, serves the entire town of Brookline. It serves that immediate neighborhood. And there's safety components in there to ensure that we can account and address any abnormal conditions.
So it is the, I guess, pipe, right?
Correct.
Is it venting gas continuously, or is it just when you're doing?
So no, it's actually a safety device. It would only operate in the event of an abnormal condition where something goes awry. It gives the opportunity the system stabilize and get rid of that excess gas. It's not part of daily operation or maintenance.
Okay, wait a minute. Someone who was first.
Welcome. Go.
Can I just really quickly jump in? I want to make sure for the audience at home, this is item 12, the grant of location public hearing for Newton Street. I got a comment that people didn't know where we were. That's where we are.
I can wait, Bernard. Who knows?
We typically don't allow serial public comments or response.
Yeah.
We allow one public comment.
Okay. Mike?
So I just wanted, this is a Google Street View of the 4 existing pipes.
Oh, they're like next to each other.
It'd be great to display
Next
that.
to each other. And I'm not online, so I can't easily put this up. If
the
anybody's
address?
online, take a look at, go to Google Maps, look at Newton Street, go down to Newton and West Roxbury Parkway, and then place the little yellow gold creature on this, on the corner, on the left-hand corner.
I'll pull it up.
Yeah, if you could.
And you could put it up on the board.
There you go.
Yeah, but he's gonna pull it.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, if you put it up there, I think that'd be helpful.
Bernard, just while that's being technically done, can I
Yeah.
ask a quick question? So just briefly, how does the gas get vented in a non-normal, situation today?
So we do not vent gas as part of regular operations maintenance. It's only under safety conditions.
Okay, so today, so is this this is an addition?
In addition, layer of safety, correct? Sure.
Okay, Miriam?
Yeah, thank you. So I think the point about covering it and maybe is really dependent on what you choose to cover it. So maybe if we're very explicit that you're planting more mature trees that already have some height so that we're not having to pass our prime in terms to see the trees grow, that might be a nice compromise. Is that?
Excuse me, yes. Mr. King, who's in engineering, this was not even allowed to be brought forth to this committee without the stipulation of what trees that
Oh, great.
the town requested
Oh,
from National Grid.
yeah.
And National Grid has agreed to it. I certainly would not do this justice.
There's no
Betula,
the 10-foot.
Dura heat
Yeah, I have
trees,
no idea.
there's a birch tree. My understanding is it's an 8 to 10 feet high tree that's being planted.
Okay.
So, I,
So it sounds like that is a part of the plan that
yes,
the foliage chosen is
Was chosen.
intentionally already at height.
correct.
Okay,
It was,
good.
there's 24 plants in total.
Okay,
That's
Okay.
24 plants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is on the screen is a picture of the site, and I guess I see
4
4,
existing.
Yeah.
Pardon me?
The existing, what the existing.
Existing,
Yeah.
so 4 foot poles. And is that a flagpole or is that one of your poles in the back?
A light
of the
pole, I
bush?
That's a light pole.
Light pole, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can put a 10-foot pole in that area or? Yeah, 60 feet back. Okay,
Oh,
No, but
on the medium there.
It's just up
And then
past the
cover it.
SCADA box, that metal structure that you see is the communication device for us, is just
Right.
past that.
Okay,
oh,
so
good.
this is
Yeah.
really not on
Okay.
on
It's
any
DCR.
That's on the median.
It's shared property with DCR.
Okay.
That's, I was wondering how you're gonna get an 8-foot tree to root in front of that, what's there. Now I can,
Now
if
it
it's
makes
60
sense.
feet back, then you've
Yes.
got,
Okay.
Yes.
And I see Robert King is
Mm.
available. If you
Yeah.
you have anything to add,
Robert, it's necessary.
Yeah, good evening to the board and thank you for being elevated. So what I would offer to the board for consideration tonight is my conversations with the gas company. We would not be where we are here this evening if I didn't have the support of the Parks and Recreation team. They actually did the design that my expectation of the gas company was they would comply with. Gas company thankfully has complied with or agreed to comply with that plan. And we would not be submitting this plan with support to this board without that in place. So I do believe, based on my correspondence with the Parks Department, that this is the right mitigation that we should be asking for this type of improvement that's taking place at this location.
okay. Any other comments from the select board? Any other?
So far, no one has used the hand raise or Q&A feature to indicate that they would like to speak. Folks in the audience or on Zoom, there are 13 attendees. Please use the hand raise or Q&A feature to indicate you'd like to make a comment at this public hearing.
Ms. Miller, if you'd like to, make a 1 or 2 minute comment to wrap up before we close the hearing, I'll let you do that.
I just wonder if you realize the traffic that is going around these vent pipes every single day. This is a horribly dangerous intersection of Newton Street and West Roxbury Parkway. Newton Street's coming one way and another way, and people are making U-turns from Newton Street coming down.
Do you
from
think
where
do you think the pipes are going to increase the danger or?
Well, I think
what-
there's a danger now. Maybe they should put something else around where the pipes are
Okay,
at that section.
okay, thank you. Okay, unless there are any other comments, I'd like to call for approval of this grant of location. I move approval of the grant of location request from National Grid for work at Newton Street, gas main running westerly and northwesterly from West Roxbury Parkway, thence turning, thence turning and running northeasterly a distance of about 60 feet to a new pressure valve, a pressure relief valve station next to an existing regulator station. In addition to a new below-grade vault, new above-grade equipment in the median will consist of a 5-inch diameter, 4 feet tall vent post painted green, and a 12-inch diameter, 10 feet tall vent stack painted gray. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John?
Aye.
Miriam?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
Good evening. Okay, next, let's see, we've done the grant of location public hearing for Fuller Street. This is Eversource and the speaker is Jacqueline Duffy.
I have offered Jacqueline promotion. They're on Zoom. Just need them to accept that. Jacqueline, you've been promoted to a panelist. You may unmute and share your video when you're ready to speak.
Hi, good evening. How are you?
Fine.
Tonight we'd like to install approximately, I'm sorry, hold on one second. We'd like to install approximately 97 feet of conduit on Fuller Street. And this is to provide new service to the EV charging station and Fuller Street parking lot.
Okay. Any questions from the select board?
Just one.
Oh, John?
Is this just one charging station? I mean, how many charging how many cars can be charged at this station?
Oh, that's a good question.
Probably one at a
Very
time.
good question.
No, it's not. It's not usually one at a time.
Maybe at least two.
Sizable parking lot.
Rob, do you know?
Usually it's 6, I believe.
In this case, I apologize to the board that I don't have the specific number. I believe it's between 8 and 10 for this location, and it works to address the goals and objectives that this board has defined and that we're working to support. So this team is very excited about this. We were working with the MWRA because of an 8M permit that was going to be required to support this. And I want to specifically thank an individual on my team that I believe is on the call tonight, Sam Downs, who has been helping both Eversource and working with the MWRA to deliver on this. So I appreciate the support on this one. I am happy to get back to the board with the specific number on the charging stations.
And Rob, just to be clear as to why I asked the question, you know, this is 97 feet of conduit. It just felt to me as though we ought to get the maximum benefit out of it if we can, in terms of the number of charging stations that it services.
And John, too, just so you can see, it's a pretty sizable.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Mike?
This is DC charging or is it level 2 charging? AC?
Level 2.
He's at level 2.
Level 2. Okay, so somebody has to actually park there for several hours in order to get a full charge. Yeah, okay.
Okay. This is a public hearing. I'd like to open the public hearing and see if anyone wants to make a comment.
Please use the hand raise or Q&A feature if you are on Zoom and you'd like to indicate that you'd like to speak. We have 11 attendees right now, and no one is using the hand raise or Q&A feature to let us know they'd like to make a comment. I'll give it a minute. Once again, raise your hand on Zoom or use Q&A to tell us that you'd like to speak.
Okay.
Can I just, this is Jacqueline Duffy again. Can I say one thing? I'm looking at the sketch and I believe Rob was right. It looks like there's 10 EV charging stations.
10, great.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'd like to close the public hearing, and unless there are any comments or questions from the board, move for approval. I move approval for the grant of location request from Verizon New England, Inc. for warrant. I'm sorry, wrong one. I move approval of a grant of location request from NStar Electric / Eversource to provide approximately 97 feet of conduit to provide new underground electric service to a new electric vehicle charging station at the Fuller Street parking lot. And as we just heard, for 10 cars being charged. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John?
Aye.
Miriam?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Thank you. And
Thank
that
you. Have a nice
concludes-
night.
Thank you, you too. And that concludes our grant of location public hearings. You want to say something about the potential future?
Yes, I'd love to. So we've now had 2 licensing hearings, licensing board, panel meetings that have been successful in reducing the select board's workload. We just went through 5 different grant of location hearings, took about, well, I'd say close to 45 minutes to an hour. We would love to take that on as well as part of the licensing panel. I will have paperwork recommending as much to you for your August 15th hearing meeting, and if that's amenable, if the board is amenable to that, the licensing panel can take on grant of location public hearings as well, and then that could be part of your miscellaneous agenda.
So I would say that the licensing hearings that have been held separately by staff have been very successful, and the public can see the minutes of the last meeting, which is in our packet, I believe, to get a sense of the thoroughness within which these licenses are evaluated by the committee, and the value of that information for the select board. Okay, let's move on. Police Commissioner Advisory Committee update, Chief Jen Pastor. So to give you some background here. Hold on, let me find my notes here. So the reason why I asked to have this presentation is that the select board, we are police and fire commissioners, whatever that means, but it does mean something. It means that we're responsible for oversight of public safety in general. And I think that that means that we really should be alerted to issues in the realm of public safety that are developing problems in the community, or that the community wants addressed by the town, and to the extent it's within our power to take steps to fix any problems or address any issues that we find. So in order to do that, it's important that we have good understanding of those issues and the data regarding public safety. So I've asked Chief Pastor to just give us an update on how the police department operates in the area of, I'm particularly interested, community policing, which is such an important part of your mission, of your functioning, as well as some of the crime statistics that we should know about, other than through anecdotal, anecdotally, or from people running into us in the street and saying, "Do you know what happened last night?" Which is, which we do get a lot of, but I think it's important for us to get from you, Chief Pastor, a good understanding of what the state of public safety is here in Brookline.
Sure. And just so the board has an understanding of how this presentation came together, I do get, my command staff gets quarterly updates with regard to, numbers, crimes, stops, arrests, things like that. We compile a mid-year report, which the board should have. I haven't seen it yet. It's in progress, but at least we have the crime data ready for you. And when that report is complete, probably in a week or two, you'll have the entire thing emailed out to you. So I definitely want to start by thanking Miss Rose Heck O'Keefe. She's our civilian crime analyst who's put this together for us. She's not likely on the call tonight, although knowing her, maybe she is, but she deserves the credit for what you see here. So when we talk about crime, we break it into Part A, Part B. Part A is, what we're all the most familiar with. So when you look at the numbers and you look at the percentages, in particular, it's going to look like crime is up from where we were mid-year in 2022. Like anything, when we're talking about relatively low numbers, the percentages can be a little bit misleading. But I will say that, murders remain at 0. We've had no reported rapes for the first half of the year. We've had 3 robberies, 67 assaults. About half of those are domestic violence related assaults. This is the overview here. We had 326 of those crimes that were reported were property crimes as opposed to violent crimes, 18 burglaries. Majority of the property related crimes are larcenies, which just means taking without force. 13 reported motor vehicle thefts, which I would just, to put that in context, up until maybe 2 or 3 years ago, we really had seen almost 0 motor vehicle thefts coming in. And I think that what's driving that number up is both keyless entry systems and a lot of property owners parking tandem, leaving their key fobs in the car, things like that. I would say those are pretty preventable. And also the increase in Uber Eats and DoorDash type deliveries where delivery personnel are running in, leaving their car running, and it's an easy target. So I do think these crimes are, a lot of them are preventable, just maybe with increased public education and attention to the matter.
Can I ask a question? Shoplifting is a problem in some areas. Where would that be listed under here? Is it not a major crime, or is it under larceny?
It is. So it's most shopliftings fall under larceny because they're taking something without force. on occasion, if there's a struggle that ensues and somebody assaults either another customer or a storekeeper, it'll fall into the larcenies. I mean, sorry, fall into the robberies.
Yeah.
So just so I'm understanding correctly, it looks like the entire 7% increase is larceny.
Correct.
Wow.
It's a national problem.
Yeah,
Exactly. I do think it's on trend with what we're seeing nationwide.
thank you.
I know we're short on time. I think this is, I've already touched on this, with the exception of, Part A crimes have steadily increased over the past 5 years. Again, I think that's on trend with what we see nationwide. The graph that you see, the larger one there, it's the number of crimes we've had versus arrests. Arrests are up this year, compared to where we were last year, which, depending on how you look at it, is a good or a bad thing. But first half of the year, we've had 112 arrests. That's about 83% higher, 84% higher than where we were last year. Last year at this point, we'd only had about 61 made. There's the breakdown of who's been arrested by race and gender. Juveniles accounted for 3 arrests. It's only 3, but to me, that's a high number. Obviously, with most juvenile cases, arrest is not the preferred response. However, in these 3 separate incidents, I would argue that the arrests were justified and in the best interest of public safety. I know Bernard had asked, actually, with maybe in the context of talking about juvenile crime, that I touch on the grant that was approved earlier tonight. That $300,000+ grant for the Department of Mental Health is a continuation of the grant funding we've been receiving to do the training, the CIT training. This is the 5th year that we've received that money. It's gone up a little bit each year. From when we first started, I think it was 218,000, but we're getting the same amount that we got last year. That supports the training that our department provides to Norfolk County departments as well as Newton, on how to successfully de-escalate situations, introduce alternatives to arrest, and keep that work moving forward.
Can I ask another question?
Yeah.
Sorry. I just find this, I love data. I love data. Of the 3 juveniles, do you know the demographics, male, female, race identification?
3 Black males, 2 were Brookline residents.
Thank you.
Sure.
Do you have the residents of the other arrestees?
Residents.
For example, there are
Yes.
36 arrestees identified as Black, but are they?
Rose took care of
Next
us. She
page.
has it right the next slide. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
you.
On your left.
Pardon me?
You have this.
Yeah, I just hadn't gotten to that page.
Yep, it's next.
We're in the packet.
They weren't in the packet. They were.
we haven't
just
got-
a-
Well, it got into the packet about 3 hours ago.
Okay.
So,
Yep.
yeah, the packet should be updated.
So it was about 30% of the arrestees were residents of Brookline, 70% non.
Oh, wow.
Onto field interviews, which, as I think most of you know, years ago, we stopped lumping all field encounters into one category. We teased out persons of interest from people that, we have a conversation with when their alarm goes off. So when we talk about field interviews now for this purpose, we are talking about people who fall into that person of interest category. So what we are seeing is that, there has been an increase in field interviews. I know you can all read, so I'll spare you the break, or at least I'll spare you reading the breakdown here. But the race and gender breakdown is there for you to see as well. And to put it out there before Bernard asks,
What exactly is a field interview?
so it would basically be if somebody, we get a call, some suspicious activity. It's determined to be suspicious activity. Maybe somebody is suspected of being involved in a crime, either, having committed one or about to commit one, but it's not enough to tie them to a police report or a crime. This is one way to capture that data.
Thank you.
So it looks like about 85% non-residents with FIs.
And it includes
Oops.
racial profiling by residents.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there has been in previous reports, I can't remember if she put it in here, because that has come up, rightfully so. People, including me, want to know why there's such a discrepancy when it comes to the race of people being stopped. So we do typically go through and see the circumstances that led to that stop. In an overwhelming majority of cases, it's because we were called there. In just more to that point, in the event that we are called somewhere, and it's determined that it's a needless call, that wouldn't be entered as an FI.
So can I ask a question?
Sure.
So this is a particularly interesting one to me because the Task Force on Reimagining Policing in Brookline looked at traffic data. And one of the things we looked at was the number of violations issued as a percentage of total stops to people who are residents versus non-residents and how that broke down by race and so forth. And the 169 moving violations of Brookline residents, sorry, it was just.
Did I go back? Okay.
Versus 1,143 suggests to me, at least, that we're still giving violation citations more to not disproportionately to non-residents versus residents. And as a resident who has had a warning instead of a violation, I was so glad that I was a resident. But just the same, we should be treating people as even-handedly as possible. And this is actually, I've seen previous reports of this sort, and this data is actually very well put together. It's actually, you get something out of this as opposed to just the numbers. But that's a particularly interesting one that sticks out. And I wonder if you have any comments about that, any thoughts about that?
It's definitely an area that I think is worth exploring further. And something that I would like to do, if we had maybe a second Rose, is analyze the crash data, because I think that would help paint a more accurate picture of who's driving through town and who's driving in ways that might be unsafe through town, and maybe match up and see what that looks like.
Can you do that?
We can do whatever you want.
Well, no.
Can we do it quickly and for no money? No.
Is it feasible? And if it's something that, okay, you don't need to do it for me.
Yeah, no.
Really, but for your own sense of what your officers are doing with regard to giving citations to non-residents versus residents disproportionately.
Sure.
It's worth taking a look at it. So you might want to think about that.
I agree. Yeah, it is on my list of things I'd like to see analyzed a little bit further.
Paul?
Yep, Chief, I sat through advisory committee meeting. I may have been 6 months ago, maybe. And there was someone had spoken, I think during public comment, about the precipitous decline if you looked at several years back at the number of stops, citations. And it was dramatic, I think. And there's some concern about that, is that are we actually enforcing the traffic rules and regulations, bike lane issues, blocking bike lanes. And I'm wondering, if you have any insight into are officers hesitant now to pull over? Are they just not getting out of the cruisers? What could you provide some insight?
Yeah, I don't think it's a very, simple one sentence answer. I think it's probably a combination of everything that you just mentioned. Certainly, when COVID hit, for sanitation related reasons, we saw definitely a sharp decrease in the number of car stops we were making. People didn't want to interact with anybody. And then in the wake of the murder of George Floyd, and locally, the rhetoric that was happening, some productive, not so productive, I think it did send a message to the officers. And there was even, there's talk in the PCAC about maybe sending postcards instead of stopping motorists to advise them in real time about a violation. I think all those things have left some of the officers confused about what our public wants from them, and how to best, police the community around public, around traffic laws. So,
I live just off of Beacon Street at a pretty busy intersection at Carlton
Mm.
and Beacon Street. And I do quite a bit of walking around with the kids.
Yeah.
And, you know, people are just blowing through red lights. They're not stopping. They're, you know, I personally experience a lot of violations. And I don't see a lot of enforcement. Very rarely do I actually see an officer having pulled over someone and writing them a ticket. And I just, you know, it feels like it's getting less safe to walk and bike around Brookline.
Mhm.
You know, it sounds like there's symptoms as to why that's occurring.
Yeah, and I do hope that that'll get better. And my emphasis is, of course, not on quantity, but quality of
Right.
stops, and to absolutely, you know that, let the officers know they'll be supported when they're making those stops, for safety related.
Well, we did hear earlier that the roadways are helping to slow people down by the potholes.
Yeah, Bernard?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mike.
So I think it's important. Also, we had a conversation earlier about the number of vacancies in the traffic division in particular. So one of the factors is there are fewer officers detailed to do this kind of work or assigned to do this kind of work. And I think that's important to remember. But the question of, you know, communities, what the community wants is a really good one. And I think the community wants two things. We want absolute enforcement, and we want nobody to have to interact with the police officer, which is
Done.
ridiculous. You know, sorry, that can happen.
Yeah.
And so, you know, hopefully, the officers will get the message that they are supported when they're doing the right thing, and they, you know, we understand that they're trying very hard to do the right thing.
Yeah, and that is my job. That's on me.
Yep.
John?
Thanks so much for this report. I just wanted to ask Charles if he could be sure that at some point this becomes available, you know, for public access, because I know the board only got it, you know, a few hours ago, and we got it through a packet that comes to us in our email, but I'm not sure it's available now. Excuse me, for people who are following this meeting at home. So obviously, with the permission of the chief, if it's in final form, if this could be made available for the public to follow along with. But this doesn't cover, and it covers, you know, some very good stuff, but what it doesn't cover, and something that has been of interest to me, and I hope we will have a chance to discuss in the near future, is sort of a progress report on the complaint process. And we've gone through a lot of effort to deal with how do you accommodate any kind of input from the public in the form of complaints about police conduct, you know, either during an arrest or conduct at the station when a person comes in from the street and off the street and just asks for service, and, you know, maybe has a complaint later. And we now have a police commissioners advisory committee, and we had some work done by the office of the OC. I never get it right. Office of Diversity, Inclusion, Equity, and Community Relations, did some work on trying to simplify and make very clear a complaint process form for people to make complaints. And then there have been, I've seen, you know, reports delivered periodically to that office of X number of complaints came in a given month. What I haven't seen is a coming together by the various groups, including the select board, over what use do we make of these complaints? You know, how can we review what the complaint said, how the complaint was dealt with, what the end result of the complaint being filed and the complaint being investigated and the complaint and a finding then being delivered? What was the end result? And excuse me, do we think we now have a satisfactory process that deals in a way that as many parties as possible would agree is fair? You know, that it got investigated thoroughly and without any prejudice, and that the finding was based on the findings of the investigation and fair, the end result was. And then, you know, if any discipline ever does result, how do we assess what that says in terms of how the department is dealing with disciplinary issues? So do you feel the need for that discussion to kind of clarify, exactly how does review of the complaint process take place now? Does it take place at the PCAC? Does it take place simply within the police department? Does the select board get involved? Those are questions I'd love to see addressed.
Sure. And actually, I don't want to steal her presentation, but Judy Fabricant, who's the chair of the PCAC, will be here August 15th, I believe. And
Okay,
that was
great.
her intent to go through that process in greater detail. Up here, we were able to pull up the 4 complaints that we've had this year.
Yep.
The demographics of the employee, of the complainant, what the nature of the complaint was, and then the finding.
Yep.
The PCAC does receive complaints separate from how we receive them in the police department. Our process to complement or file
Yeah.
a complaint against an officer can be found online on our website. And I think it's on the PCAC website as well. But I think that's a conversation that will never be done having. I think transparency and accountability is everything. If we don't have that, we don't deserve the support of the community. So
Yeah.
This is a conversation that needs to be just always happening, and our processes need to be evolving as our community evolves.
Great. Thank you.
Miriam.
Yes, I actually want to, this is actually not for you. I mean, it is for you, but I want to go back to Mike's identified binary of, we want enforcement, but we don't want people to have encounters with police officers. And I'm going to actually go to Chaz and say, this is a good opportunity to touch back on cahoots, or a cahoots-like model that we had discussed at one point, is something that both of the police commission committees had kind of come in agreement to.
Sort
It
of.
has okay, close. That has fallen off our radar.
Well, one was in agreement
What?
with itself anyway.
Yeah. But anyways, I think it's such a well-identified binary, and with a police force that is short-staffed and traffic enforcement, seems like an ideal time to bring this conversation back. To the
Well,
table.
yeah, a couple of things on that. One is the broader question of social services. I know is something that the chief deals with on a regular basis, has that focus. We are very much, the department is very much ahead of the curve in terms of its integrated social services efforts, and and especially its integration with other departments, and it's there and it's getting better. I think it's always important when we talk about cahoots. Cahoots is one of those things
As a
that-
model. Doesn't have to be-
Right. It was such a buzzword early on because people saw it as a model, and Eugene then had success. The city has stopped even offering other municipalities to talk with it about the model because it is so unique to them that they basically have said it's not replicable elsewhere. We don't want to waste your time doing that. I think it's important for us to move away from that as a buzzword and think more about integrated alternatives in social service provision, which is what we're working on now. And when we talk about Warrant Article 13 in a little bit, you're going to see some of the fruits of that that's starting to come through. Interdepartmental work on things that address holistic issues so that there is less need for encounters with the police. For example, we don't want the police to be involved, or marshals to, or the state to be involved in things like evictions. We don't want those encounters to happen. We don't want people to be committing crimes of desperation because they can't afford to make rent. So we are identifying the root causes of these problems and trying to come up with ways to connect people with services through a hub and spokes model before we get to the point where law enforcement needs to get involved. So we're very on top of that. And I know too that the work Annabelle Lane does, and now with the ability to hire another social worker, the team that you're building out does in terms of crisis intervention, but also crisis prevention, crisis diversion, identifying people who have high touch points with the police, who are so much of the work that they do involves repeat callers, people who are often in agitatable or highly agitated mental states, or people who are in desperate situations and have difficulty escaping them. Being able to identify who those people are and make sure that their touch points are not ones where the officers are sent every time, but where instead there's de-escalation involved. All of those efforts are really ongoing. And I think the chief is really, has been a leader in the department, even before she was made chief in these efforts. And I think that's really a big portion of why the department is so thoughtful in those responses. So I will say there's more to come on this. We have more to do, and we have more to do from a multi-departmental model. But I think as you'll see when we talk about housing as one aspect of this, that we're making good strides. So I'm very optimistic of the direction we're taking.
I will say I have been to Eugene many times. It is a very unique.
It's not a huge city, but it has the
Oh, it's so
largest,
bizarre though. It's like stuck in the 1970s.
really.
100%.
Culturally.
Like a time warp. It's like a
Culturally,
time warp.
yeah.
Interesting coming from you. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
I'd fit right in there.
Pardon me?
I'd fit right in there, you know?
Paul, do you have something? Oh, just shaking your hands. Mike, or you, do you have any?
No, no,
Okay.
if I have anything to say at all, repeat that I really, this has been a good, very good conversation and really quite different than I think we've had in the past.
Yeah. And we should think about, what ideas we have to improve, our functioning as police commissioners, as well as, suggestions that would help the department to, be more in line with what the community wants. So, but you weren't finished.
I can be. A couple more slides. We can talk about National Night Out and then we'll show that up there. We'll
Great.
come back. Yeah, so we're at complaints, use of force. This is something that I get a regular report, a monthly report, and I believe you all get it as well, from Lieutenant Thornton in our Office of Professional Responsibilities. We document, for us, the definition of use of force is anything more than compliant handcuffing. So with that in mind and the number of, calls that we've responded to, roughly 20,000 so far this year, obviously 0 is the ideal, but 12, where 10 of those are, hands-on only, maybe struggling to get somebody in handcuffs, is a number I am comfortable with. The use of baton to assisted compliance is more of a, mechanics thing where somebody was fighting lying on the ground and we couldn't get their arm back. It wasn't a baton strike. It was more to use it as a lever. And a firearm display was related to a felony stop. That was made actually during one night at town meeting when a few people from South Brookline might have been late getting to town meeting. It occurred right on Route 9 at rush hour. So that ties into one of the motor vehicle pursuits. It's the same incident.
Can I ask you, the firearm display was related to people trying to get to town meeting?
No, nope. That was definitely not true.
It was the stolen, slow moving vehicle.
Exactly.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
That was in the news.
No town meeting members were harmed.
Wild, but I didn't think that wild.
Oh, that person's not a town meeting.
Okay.
No.
And-
As far as we know.
But
So-
he's running.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so, am I correct in saying that, our definition of, use of force with respect to firearms differs from what how everyone else defines it? And I understand the FBI definition of use of force is actually use of a gun as opposed to taking it out of your holster. Am I missing something there?
I would have to double check that, but some departments wouldn't call forcibly handcuffing somebody. They don't call that use of force. We do.
Well, you'd have zeros up there otherwise. I mean, just
Yeah.
think about the tiny number.
Yeah.
Out of all of those calls.
Yep. And the number of assaults that we have. So the number of assaultive people that we are encountering versus the times that we have to use force. And it's a number I'm happy with.
So one of the things that I'm concerned about, I think other people are too, is hate crimes. We have, I don't know if we have small number or a large number, but whatever the number is, I think, the risk on the horizon is probably growing. Do you have any numbers on that?
So I don't, but I can get them to you
Okay.
for sure. We have a designated hate crime officer. It's Lieutenant Sutherland in the Detective Division. So he monitors trends and also is charged with investigating anything that comes into us that's reported as a hate crime. I know you and I have had discussions offline, sorry, about hate crimes and why there might be a perception that Massachusetts has more. Of the belief that we're better at recognizing and reporting them and not that we're the most hateful, state in the country. I hope I'm right. And I don't necessarily think that's, it's scary numbers, but maybe it's good that we have, community members that are willing to come forward and report when something's off and report when something's hate, motivated by hate.
John?
I just wondered if there's anything you have that you can report on the investigation of the armed invasion on Warren Street.
I am confident that that will come to a, we'll see arrest soon on that.
Mhm.
Our detectives have been working 20-hour days and nights. They've had some really good leads and they're doing some really good work with partnering with state and federal agencies.
Mhm. Right.
Mary?
I would love also to see, if you don't mind or if it's possible, I'd be interested in the citizen calls for suspicious behavior. What drives that? Who's calling? What are they saying? That kind of, I think that relates a little bit to the hate crime, but on the other side.
Yeah, and our dispatchers over the years, once we've recognized that this is sort of driving our numbers in a way we don't want to see them, our dispatch supervisor, Natalie Hunt, has done a really good job of making sure that that recognition is incorporated into the dispatch training. We do almost always have to send somebody out just to investigate, but their dispatchers doing their due diligence in terms of asking questions like, ma'am, when you say suspicious,
what do you mean?
Say more about that, and trying to tease out what's behavior and what's.
Thank you. Yeah, I find that stuff's also.
Fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, it really is.
But dangerous.
Right, yeah. I mean, you read stories of, Black town meeting members being called, knocking on doors, soliciting votes as suspicious. So I think that stuff all connects.
A few years ago, there was a report in the tab, back when we had a tab. In the police blotter, someone had called in about two guys smoking crack in a car. And the police investigated, and it was a couple MBTA employees taking a break in the car. And I always remembered that because
MBTA employees smoking crack.
right. No, I always remember that.
Problematic on so many levels.
I always remember that because in the wrong community, that could really, really result in a tragedy.
I have a young Black officer who was sitting in his car waiting for his detail to start and a resident called to report suspicious activity. So we're all working on it.
We know you are, and we appreciate it.
Sounds like good work on us. That is, residents have to understand, when something is appropriate to call and when, they have to take a second look and ask themselves whether they're getting a little silly about something.
I mean, it's hard because if there is a real threat, you don't want people to hesitate.
Yeah,
But,
if you see something, say something on the one hand, on the other hand, well, wait a minute, what are you seeing? It's.
Pursuits.
Okay.
And
So you want questions or comments? We've been giving you.
Yeah.
I know, well.
Ongoing.
Yeah, great.
So what domestic violence is a hot issue. And there is a letter in I think the Globe or somewhere by Susan Howard's, who's a Brookline lawyer, about restraining orders and whether they're effective. And there's a conversation about that. At one point, I think she made that's important is that violation of a restraining order is a crime.
Right.
So, I mean, they may not be effective in one level, but at another level, if you commit a crime, then that, pumps the issue up, to a higher level of significance. Is there anything you can tell us about domestic violence cases here in Brookline?
I was happy to
I
see.
see you have a lot, there's a lot, or a significant number.
I was happy to see Susan write that piece. And it was unfortunately in response to the tragic incident that happened on Brookline Street. And somebody had come out to say that a restraining order is just a piece of paper. And I understand that, that kind of soundbite, but I would just say that, our agency in particular, we have members of the detective unit that are tasked just with assisting victims of domestic violence. We are in the process of hiring a replacement for the irreplaceable Doreen Gallagher. She's doing well in her retirement. But we hope, we've identified some very qualified candidates. We hope to have that person in place soon. And I agree with Susan's stance that it's not just a piece of paper for somebody, who's stuck, who takes that step, and it's courageous to go forward and get a restraining order. It does enable the police department to act when there's a violation of that order that's arrestable as opposed to, you know, if somebody's been victimized over and over and there's no order in place, the police can show up, and if there's not an arrestable offense, then then we walk away.
Well,
Is it true that many of the domestic violence incidents, the victims refuse to become a witness or to follow through and
It is true. And
against their abuser?
it's true. And what, well, I will say that there have been members of the community, past and, you know, past and present, most recently, I think last week, who have witnessed what they suspect to be domestic violence, who have stepped up, who have called us, who have stayed around to talk to us, and who are willing to come forward, be part of the prosecution, for, you know, assist people that they don't know and really step up in that way. And in those cases, you know, where a victim isn't willing to speak for themselves or defend themselves, for any myriad of reasons, we really do appreciate, you know, when members of the public are willing to sacrifice in that way.
Yeah, in defense of victims of domestic violence who don't want to press charges or cooperate, I mean, there's some logic to that way of thinking, and that is that when you're dealing with perpetrators of domestic violence, you're dealing with people who really, you probably can't reason with, and the police can't really stop every potential risk situation. And victims know that, you know, they're basically out on their own. So, I mean, we have to figure out a way of giving them confidence that if they come to the police with a restraint or come with a restraining order, that there's going to be some way in which we can protect them. Because, you know, their concern now is that, no, I can't be protected.
I had a conversation with Susan Howards about this exact issue of how do you help victims get out of their situation? And there's a great limitation, which is places for them to go, housing. And I know there's been some work with maybe local hotels, but this is a big gap, is my understanding.
Right.
And you probably see this on the force, that when you have someone, where do you take them?
Right.
There's not a lot of places. Is that correct?
That is correct. Not a lot of options, and especially if you're talking about a parent, you know, who's looking to leave with children, or somebody with pets, or somebody who has other medical complications. You know, we're dealing with humans, and these situations are always more complicated.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Chief Pastor. This has been, I thought, very interesting, and I hope that select board members have ideas or suggestions that they, you know, convey them to, I guess, Chaz, and he can convey them to the Chief Pastor, or directly to.
Or you can direct them to any of our officers when you come to National Night Out on August 1st.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, let's make sure to get in a plug for that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, next, warrant article updates. Chaz, tell us what you've been doing about these things that have been referred to the select board.
There's a lot going on, but I'm going to keep it brief since it's 9 o'clock.
Okay.
And I want to make sure.
9 o'clock's early for this board.
I know, but we started at 5. We were entering the 4-hour mark.
That's
Now
true.
we're in Iceman cometh territory. But, you know, we're talking about late Eugene O'Neill, long day's journey into night. Can I share my screen, Charlie? Can you turn off the screen share over there?
That's, hold on.
It is on. It's just that because the
Oh, you need to,
the
I'm gonna make it so you can.
the podium is sharing.
You should be able to share over it.
Yes, I got it. There we go. Thank you. Let's start with warrant article 13, housing stability office. I want to give thanks to every department that has contributed to this so far: planning, health, town council, IT, buildings, DPW. I mean, every department under the sun, you know, and then some, has made, you know, serious contributions. The Council on Aging, the police department, to the efforts of a whole of government approach to warrant article 13, which, although the Attorney General has not yet approved it for final, we have no doubt that it will be approved, and we're moving expeditiously to accomplish the community's aims. We talked last time about the short-term solution, which was updating and making more visible the resources we know we have So if you go to the Brookline, Massachusetts website, brooklinema.gov, go to departments, scroll down. There is now a housing stability office right there, front and center on the departments. You can also see now that on the front page, there is a direct link to that Brookline Housing Stability Resources. And if you click there, you will go to this page, the Brookline Housing Stability Resources page, which was last updated this morning. It has on there a list of current resources that we have for access to emergency funding and housing assistance, resources for renters, access services, resources for home buyers, resources for landlords and homeowners, legal services connections. It also has phone numbers for who to call when. If you have questions about reasonable accommodations requests, you can talk to Sarah Kaplan. Requests about fair housing or discrimination complaints can contact Lloyd Jeleno, Dr. Jeleno. Sanitary conditions, public health, human services, structural safety, the building department, applying for affordable housing, the planning department, and legal advocacy organizations, town council's office. All of these departments have really stepped up to play their part on this, and it has been really heartening. And I'm very grateful for the whole team for their efforts. And again, I want to thank, I've said pretty much every department has had a role in this, but I want to thank too the Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Community Relations, Dr. Jeleno and his team. All of them have been involved in this and making sure that this information is present and accessible. So thanks to them. This is the beginning. This is the beginning of our efforts on this article, on compliance with this article. The RFP for the inventory of services, I believe, is out, or if it's not out, it'll be out at the end of the week. That is 30 days. We're very excited on that front because that will kind of finish closing the loop between the established needs and the known of what we have. We've had really productive conversations with other communities and with experts in the field on hub and spokes models of social services work. We are now working on the back end of how we internally track comments and concerns that we get about housing so that we can identify trends and timelines and particular problem areas so that we can dispatch appropriately. For example, if we get 5 complaints from, maybe it's, someone talks to a police officer, someone makes a call to the health department, whatever, and it may not be cross-reported. We're building a centralized database of reports on issues so that, for example, we've identified maybe there's a problem with a landlord in this building and that, 3 different departments have gotten 5 different complaints each about. When you see all 15 of them in a line, you realize that the central, unifying factor is the building. And so we're able to target that and address it appropriately. We're building out the back end of that using our internal ticketing service. The IT department has really been instrumental in that. I want to thank them for Tom and Fung for their efforts on that front. So we're optimistic that we're making real progress here at a rapid clip. The full conclusion of this, the full movement towards an integrated, holistic social services model is going to take time. But in the interim, we are using the resources we have at our disposal to make sure that we are better at addressing these needs when they come to us, and that people understand our limitations. We can't, again, get involved in landlord-tenant disputes. We can't solve your landlord-tenant disputes. We can't weigh in on your behalf, nor can we weigh in on a landlord's behalf. But we can connect you to resources for people who may be able to advocate for you. And we can make sure that you know what the available universe of those resources is. So this is where we are on warrant Article 13. Is there any questions?
Let me ask a question first. On the department's page, there is a link to Housing Stability Office.
Yes.
Do we have, well, actually not do we have an office, do we have a person that staffs that office?
So David is the point person currently who's staffing
David,
David Guzman, who is at the planning department, who is kind of at the point person for kind of the other questions, other comments. But this is where the contact us is really helpful. While we don't have a because planning historically ran this site, this resource, it kind of defaults down, unfortunately still to David, but we want to make sure that we are able to route those things appropriately so he doesn't have to play switchboard.
Okay. I mean, many people from the 20th century need someone to call as opposed to clicking on things. John?
Well, interestingly enough, I had somewhat the same thought, but first I want to say this is really exciting, and it's a really encouraging response. And the one person you didn't hear thanked was our town administrator himself, because he's not going to pat himself on the back. But you deserve a lot of thanks for responding very effectively. And it just sort of feels like, my goodness, we're on the same wavelength. And there is, in fact, in front of us now, something that I thought was just kind of in our heads and might not ever come together, but there it is. I think it could use something along the lines that Bernard was just mentioning. I get the point about, we don't want somebody to play, phone operator, but there needs to be, for the person who looks at all of these different choices that there are as to who to contact with your particular problem and is still confused and doesn't know, where to turn, there needs to be still, do you still need help in figuring out how to get your problem dealt with? We can let's have a conversation, or, write to us and we'll write back or something like that. And I just want people who are watching to know that while this was being introduced, I did a couple of Google searches, and it's wonderful, because you search Town of Brookline help with housing and you get the Brookline Housing Stability Resources Office, top of the Google search. So we're off and running. I also want to say that I think the individuals who brought this to town meeting deserve the town's thanks for highlighting the problem, getting a commitment from town administrative staff to do something about it. And we're off and running, and I think we've made some real significant progress.
Yeah, I'd like to give praise to Chaz also for this. And the thing that I think people should realize is that this is not a simple, put together a page with a bunch of links. I mean, some of what he was talking about really kind of boggled my mind. Back channel. What were you saying?
The back end.
Coordination.
Back end, and IT coordination and using our existing systems to take comments and all. I mean, this is quite a process that you put together, and it's we can be proud of it, because it's going to be really, really effective. So, wait, Miriam, did you have your hand up?
No, I was just going to compliment. I was going to agree with John on that kind of missing piece, and also say kudos.
Yeah.
Kudos to everyone involved.
Paul?
Yeah, I just agree with what you, everybody, my colleagues have said. Great job, very responsive, quickly. The back end ticketing system is a great idea. Do you have a sense of, when it might be appropriate to maybe roll up some numbers just to get a sense of demand?
Next couple months, I think.
Yeah.
We'll get this up and running. And again, credit there as well, not just to IT, but to Melissa Goff, our deputy town administrator, who's really taken point on that project. It's
great,
really yielding great results.
Great. Yeah, it'd be good to see what's happening. Thank you.
Sorry,
Mike?
I think it'd be interesting to see the data, but I think it's going to take a little while for people who are in a situation like this to know that there is a resource. And one of the things we need to do next, it seems to me, is to try to make that as broadly known as possible.
We've been categorizing this as a soft launch. We actually want to talk to the warrant Article 13 proponents and members of the community to get feedback and kind of do that work.
Good. Yeah, I was going to ask.
We want to get it out there now, because we know that these are valuable resources and that we want them to be out in the community. But this is not, a one and done. This is an iterative process.
Okay, good.
I already told Chichi, so.
I'll expect a call.
Yeah.
We've got some other articles, right?
Yeah, we got a couple others. These should hopefully be quicker. On warrant Article 17 about cannabis and equity, the final version, the draft version of the regulations on equity are coming up before the state commission at the end of this week. Our team is also, engaged independently in going to a lot of different symposia about what the practical impacts of that are going to be. I think the kind of next steps on this would be for us to brief you about those regs as they take shape, and get your input on how you'd like to proceed based on those. I think they will provide us hopefully with some practical steps we can take to be more open and inclusive to equity applicants in the event that licenses open up. We are also going to have to contend with the fact that the current version of the regulations has a retroactive negative impact on our current host community agreements. This has been described by MMA and others as, frankly, ludicrous and unconstitutional, almost certain to get them sued over it. However, the political realities of the situation are probably that they may just do it anyway and dare us to sue them over it, which is unfortunate. No one wants to be seen as being anything less than deferential to the businesses in this regard. So even to the point of passing a regulation that is, again, frankly, an unconstitutional interference with existing contracts, that you just can't do that. So we're concerned on that front, but that's kind of adjacent to the issue of the equity portion of those regulations. We don't think, even though those regulations have that sort of weird retroactive, your contracts are bad rule to them, that they are going to require the implementation or the issuance of additional licenses in communities where there are no licenses available. So I think that the scope of the conversation is likely to fall into what, beyond what we're already doing, can we do in the event that licenses become available? And this will be relevant for social consumption licenses in particular, since that area of the law is starting to take shape. What can we do to lower barriers to entry and make sure that any licenses we do issue in the future are focused through that lens of equity?
Bernard?
Yes.
I just want to point out that that MMA is holding, Massachusetts Municipal Association has a workshop or a seminar or whatever at 12 o'clock on Monday, August 7th on cannabis compliance, reviewing the draft regulations, and it's open to anybody who
you will see a lot of us there.
Yeah.
Good.
Are
John.
are they actually talking about clawing back some of the money?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was afraid that's what you were implying. Okay.
I'm,
Well, that wouldn't be
I'm hopeful that cooler heads will prevail, but
Yeah.
as someone pointed, I think our town council pointed out to me, I don't think the commission even has a general counsel currently. They're just operating in the dark. It's not encouraging.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else or any other questions?
You have one more article.
Yeah, we have one more. We're on Article 19. I am continuing to have conversations with the Suffolk University Center for Restorative Justice. And I'm moving closer to, I think, an engagement with them on the broader questions that Warrant Article 19 raised, which is a sense from members of the community that they are not feeling heard, that the mechanisms available in the town do not adequately represent their interests or needs, and that there needs to be some sort of venue available, meaningful avenue available for them to not just be heard, but to be involved in policy that impacts them. I also think it's important to, take a step back from the, emotionally charged conversation and that surrounded that warrant article and get back to the principles of, the principles that underlie it, which I think are just critically important for our community to engage with and grapple with, regardless of the framework in which they were raised. And I think it's important for us to engage with the folks who brought that warrant article. And, these are people who want to be engaged in our community and are new to that concept of community engagement. And it is difficult for us the community to sometimes grapple with people coming in, feeling ignored and marginalized for some time and wanting to have that conversation. We want to make sure that the people who haven't been heard, who have been people involved in that conversation. There's a lot of people I've talked with who, for example, who have been working on the daycare project, who are not in the public eye, who are, often young parents, single parents, who are very much outcome oriented and not statement oriented. And I think those are the people who who need that support and need that era, need that venue to be heard. Otherwise, their concerns are just left by the wayside. There isn't a constituency in our community that represents single parents looking for voucher supported childcare. It's just not it's not an issue that gets a lot of political traction until now. And so I think the Suffolk University Center for Restorative Justice is going to take a more holistic approach to this than just, yeah, there was this article, what do we do about it? It's what are the underlying problems that article was trying to solve? Who are the stakeholders we need to talk to? And how can we come together as a community to ensure that future conversations on this issue are made with empathy and respect and with an eye towards solving those problems. So I'm eager to continue having that conversation. I have a meeting scheduled with Town Council's office and ODEICR on Thursday, and we will be having a conversation about how to maximize that scope of work and work effectively. So we haven't finalized it yet, but that's a direction that we want to take.
Mike?
You raised the point of childcare, facility or a school that would take vouchers. And we have $1 million of ARPA funds sitting in limbo. The original proponents it was suggested to them that they needed to come back with a budget and needed to do that by the 1st of July. And as far as I know, nothing has come back from them. I've talked about it with Abba Taylor at the Community Foundation. There's a great interest there, recognizing that this is a real live problem. And if there's some way that we can get that sort of service made available either through existing childcare operators or by creating another one or working with BHA, that it's definitely something that needs to be done and would get some support beyond the, ongoing support beyond the $1 million to get it started. The issue is timing. That is, we only have X amount of time before we have to give that money back, or it has to get spent in some other way. So what can we expect in terms of?
I had a meeting with the original proponents of that where we discussed the budget, and it was a productive discussion. There were some comments on that, and we went back. Obviously, that it was on hold pending this investigation, which is going to be a component of this that I want to conclude by the end of September at the latest.
Yeah.
I don't want this to drag on because we have to spend this money. And so I want to make sure that we actually get that done, get it out of the way, and then move forward with this project in an effective way. So regardless of how it's done or who's involved, I think the mandate is there for affordable childcare that takes vouchers and provides services to the marginalized members.
Right. Really, the question I'm asking is it sensible, appropriate, a good idea to pursue other avenues in addition to working with the people who made the proposal originally, recognizing the the word for it, the deficiencies in their original proposal.
Well, I want to have a conversation with them about that. I don't want to be in a situation where we say, we haven't even, we were still in that iterative process. If we're not, if this investigation concludes and we're all and we're able to come up with some sort of meaningful solution that keeps the people who brought it to our attention involved in some way, great, wonderful. Then we need to do that. Because I want, I think it's important for us to, be mindful of that commitment and continue to work down that path. But we have to also be mindful of the timeline. So I want to see how this all shakes out. I know we have the ability to move that around and think through it, but I don't want to be at that stage yet. I still want to be focused on a positive outcome here rather than starting from a place of, well, we got to start immediately putting our contingencies together.
No, that's not what I'm asking about. What I'm asking is the only contingency that I can think of is finding some other mechanism, some other group to work with, whether it's an established school, a church, community foundation.
No, I'm confident under this timeline that if we have to go that direction, that we will have time to go in that direction, but I'm not going in that direction yet.
All right. That's my question.
John, I think you were next.
No, I don't have
Oh,
any more
sorry.
questions.
Oh, Paul?
So my understanding is that one of the barriers for voucher holders is that there's either a few, none, or one childcare center in Brookline that actually takes the voucher, and the issuer of the voucher requires that the center, the daycare center, actually be certified under their guidelines.
Right.
Right. And so that's why they're having to travel to JP or some other location to bring their child. And it really is, it is a disadvantage and equity issue. Do we have the ability to ask when we go through the licensing process or renewals with daycare centers, childcare centers, to require them to get this certification? Do we have the ability to do that?
I don't think so. I think because it would be a barrier above and beyond what is ordinarily required to operate, but it's something that I think we could think about. If it's not regulatory, I don't think, take a step back. I'd have to talk to town council about this from like a creative solutions basis. You might be able to do it through a bylaw. I don't think you'd be able to do it through the regulatory process.
The bylaw saying, you know, that if you're going to have a childcare operating license in Brookline, you need to have this certification.
Right.
Interesting.
But I think there too, we have to worry about preemption, right? You know, if the state has rules, the state has very specific rules about, you know, you can do these kinds of operations with this kind of license and so forth. We have to be careful that we don't run afoul of the state coming in and saying, hey, that's our turf, get out of it.
It would be interesting to pursue that because, I mean, one thing is to go start a childcare center, right? Or get the many that are already in Brookline to accept the voucher that, you know, these families have.
Yeah. And one of the possible solutions there too, as we look into this, is the possibility of incentivizing it. You know, that's the kind of the carrot and stick approach.
Mary?
So I think it's a great idea. I think the incentivizing piece is important. And I'll say this, having been the president of the board of the Heath Extended Day Program, which at the time was the only extended day that took vouchers in Brookline, it's very complicated. It actually requires a lot of paperwork. It is very hard to do. So I think we should encourage it. And I think incentivizing, potentially having somebody who can support childcare rather than giving them direct funds, maybe say we have somebody who knows how to do the paperwork, or we'll give you, you know, access to somebody who can help you with the paperwork, because that's really, in my experience, that's a big barrier.
Okay, any other discussion?
That's it for me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very interesting. Promising. Okay, next, boards and commissions appointments. We have 3 boards that we're going to vote to appoint or reappoint members to, actually just to reappoint. That's the Planning Board, Commission on Diversity, Inclusion, Equity, and Community Relations.
Gee, we have to get that changed on the website.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And trustees of the Walnut Hills Cemetery. Okay, I'm gonna just move approval of these people. I move reappointment of Mark Zarillo and Linda Hamlin for 5-year terms to the Planning Board. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Yes.
I have a question. Because Mark Cirillo, I asked this last time, Mark Cirillo wasn't, and he was staying because there was someone else hadn't come along. Has he now asked for reappointment?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'd like to know a little bit more before I vote on this.
Okay.
I'm sorry, a little bit more about what?
Yeah, what else would you like to know?
I'd like to
We
know the
can-
circumstances of why he's you know, we interview, I guess we did interview Mark.
It's,
I don't know how it happened that somehow Mark's reappointment didn't happen when it should have happened. But I've worked with Mark on the Boylston Street Corridor Study Committee. I watched him chair the planning board meeting this last week. Mark is, you know, he's as good as you could possibly ask for. He's got the qualifications. He's done a lot of great work. He's committed. I don't know why there's any hesitation at all.
But to be clear, I wasn't,
No, I know you weren't.
I wasn't asking because I didn't think he was qualified. The
And
last conversation we had was, he came before the board, before me, and he was not renewed.
Yeah.
And the reason why he was still serving was because someone else hadn't come along. That
Yeah,
was
but
the
I-
last
The
conversation.
way that came out at our last meeting, I think it was unintentionally, it was said in a way that was easily misunderstood and much to, I think Mark's, it was not fair to Mark. I mean,
Okay,
it
so
ma- it
his-
made it seem like there was some kind of issue and,
I only go
yeah.
based on what the
Yeah.
board, what the board had said. And so has he actually asked for
Yes.
reappointment?
Yeah.
That's he's put in the application
Oh, yeah.
for reappointment?
You can't understand why he wasn't reappointed last year.
So Mike, articulate.
I'd like to wait, and that's my position. I'm sorry.
I would,
Pardon me?
I'd also like to wait.
Okay, that's good enough for me. I mean, he has to be reappointed by December or
August
August 31st.
August
We
31st.
can take it up at next meeting, but I'd like the two of you to.
Yeah, let's figure out
let
what's
Chaz-
what's
let
what.
Chaz know
Yeah.
what your concerns are and
Yeah.
so that we can address them.
Yeah, okay.
But, and anyone else has concerns like you, Paul.
I'm just confused by
Okay,
the
then
process.
indicate what your confusion is and we'll try to
Understood.
correct it. Okay, so I'd like to move reappointment of Linda Hamlin for a 5-year term on the planning board. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John,
Aye.
Miriam,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. Next, Commission on Diversity, Inclusion, Equity, and Community Relations. Is that, I should know this because I wrote this. Does equity come before inclusion or after?
Your guess is as good as mine. I before E, except after C.
I think it was
Yeah.
your idea, Brian.
I know, and
We'll get it. Yeah,
Pardon
it
me?
is E first. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
You were
That's
violating.
easier to
what I
remember.
thought, but
Rules of ground.
okay.
E after D, yeah.
I
Diversity,
agree, except
equity.
after C.
Yeah.
So commission's in there.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, Commission on Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Community Relations. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Well,
Who is it?
I'd like to move reappointment of Kea Vandazio for a 3-year term on the Commission on Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Community Relations. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John,
Aye.
Miriam,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Paul.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Next, I'd like to move reappointment of Gary Hayes for 3-year term on the Board of Trustees of the Walnut Hill Cemetery. All those in
I
favor.
think it's
please-
Jerry, isn't it?
The Jerry?
Yeah, Gerald. Yeah.
Okay. It's a GER. Anyway,
Yeah.
all those in favor? Please indicate by saying aye. John,
Aye.
Miriam,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Paul.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. That concludes the business of tonight's meeting.
Excellent.
It's 9